Chapter 929. The Southern Abyss Sea was also known as the Minor Samsara Sea. Xianlian had once told Sumo that there was the Sea of Reincarnation in the south of colored glass. In the Izong world, some cultivators whose Tao and souls were destroyed would leave behind a trace of Tao shadow. If he was a Lotus Knight, he could use that trace of Tao's shadow to bring him back to the mortal world. Sumo had pinned her hopes on the revival of Xiao Huang, Wen Muran, and the others. However, Xianlian had also said that it was a sea that only Lotus scholars could see. Sumo did not expect that Ji Guang had marked the location of the Nanyuan Sea on his star map. He did not know how Ji Guang had marked the Southern Abyss Sea, but since he was already at the south of colored glass, he naturally wanted to go and have a look. The Southern Abyss Sea seemed to be full of magic. Hence, Sumo packed up and left the floating continent. She headed for the Southern Abyss Sea according to the mark on the star map. The colored glaze world was vast. The area of the white South Starfield was equivalent to the Pure Land and the ancient Lotus Starfield combined. The Southern Abyss Sea on the Lucky Light star map was located in the center of the white South Star area. Therefore, the Southern Abyss Sea was relatively close, but he still had to pass through many small worlds. The demonic arc was gone. Sumo could no longer use it to jump through space. On the other hand, if he kept jumping through space, it would consume a lot of energy. In the end, Sumo could only summon the Flying Lotus Throne. That Lotus platform was given to him by Granny Heavenly Fox back in the White Bone mainland. However, it had already been refined by Sumo. Its power had increased by quite a bit. Right now, the Lotus platform was a Samsara-grade flying treasure. Of course, it couldn't be compared to the demonic boat, but it was better than nothing. A treasure like the demonic ark was something that could only be chanced upon. Because it was born from the ancient three realms. It was not a magic treasure refined by an ordinary cultivator. Therefore, in the previous battle, Sumo could be said to have suffered great losses. He definitely didn't have the ability to get another magic boat. At this moment, Sumo was standing on top of the Lotus platform. She was no longer wearing a white robe. After all, the Demon King's appearance was too eye-catching. If there was another ambush like before, or if the Lotus warriors were to make a move, then Sumo would not be so lucky. Therefore, Sumo suppressed her realm to the third layer of the rebirth realm. At the same time, he put on a green robe and changed his appearance to that of a pale-faced scholar. If it wasn't a Lotus scholar, no one would be able to see through him. After all, his disguise technique came from 7th Senior Sister Windwheel. On this point, he was confident. Therefore, it was not difficult for Sumo to conceal herself. At this moment, he was like an ordinary reincarnated cultivator roaming the worlds. The third level of the rebirth realm was neither too high nor too low in the universe. It wouldn't attract too much attention and wouldn't become the prey of other cultivators. The Lotus platform was a relatively common flying treasure in the hidden world. Therefore, Sumo was rather low-key this time. This interception made him realize the danger and the gap between them. In this sense, he would be more cautious, which was a good thing. Sumo had to first figure out some things about the Lazuli world. After leaving the floating continent, according to Ji Guang's star map, he first passed a small world formed by 18 stars. The star in the middle of this small world was blue and white from the starry sky, extremely beautiful. On Ji Guang's star map, there was a label for this star, Sangharama star. This small world was the Sangharama realm. Regarding the Sangharama realm, there were a few lines of small characters on Ji Guang's star map. Sangharama realm, a total of 18 stars, derived from the meaning of 18 Sangharama. The realm respected the Buddhist Dharma and the Buddhist path flourished. There were 36 immortal sections. The largest sect, Four Skies, had no venerable realm cultivators. Lusangharama Star, the Four Skies sect. Sumo thought about these two names and couldn't help but feel a bit interested. Therefore, as soon as his Lotus platform moved, he directly landed on the Sangharama planet. The Sangharama planet, compared to other stars, was not considered big. It was about the size of the former pure Saturn planet. More than half of the entire planet was covered by endless blue sea water. The Sangharama continent was concentrated in the center of the planet. The continent was surrounded by seawater. Of course, there were scattered islands in the sea. The Sangharama planet was rich in spirit energy, and the scenery was picturesque. After entering the Sangharama realm, Sumo naturally put away his lotus platform. Then, he heard endless Sanskrit chanting. The Sanskrit chanting seemed to reverberate across the entire planet. It floated faintly, but it was also clear and soothing to the ears. It was a feeling that Sumo hadn't had in a long time. After all, ever since he had been reincarnated, Sumo had either been cultivating or searching. Sometimes he even forgot about everything around him. He didn't have time to quietly enjoy the scenery. The Sanskrit chanting made Sumo feel at ease. Then, he chose to land in the largest city on the continent. Although it was called a city, it didn't have the tall city walls of an ordinary city. It was a city full of primitive flavor. However, there were 3 large golden words floating in the air above the city: Stupa City. The entire Stupa City was no more than 50 kilometers wide. It was surrounded by mountains, and on the other side was a large river that passed through the city. Inside the city, the Sanskrit chanting reverberated, and fragrant mist lingered. Sumo's divine sense swept the area. In the entire city, there were millions of people, and monks seemed to occupy half of them. Many temples had been built on the streets and alleys of the city. Almost every temple was flourishing with incense, and smoke curled in spirals. Sumo appeared on a long street. On both sides of the street there were all kinds of Buddhist shops and halls. There were many monks, as well as good men and women, most of them holding 1 or 2 Buddhist artifacts in their hands. It was bustling with activity. However, Sumo discovered that they all seemed to be heading towards the west side of the city. Sumo curiously asked a white-haired old man. He was a mortal, but he had white hair and a youthful face. He was quite extraordinary. "Sir, I see that you are all heading towards the west side of the city. Is there something big happening in the west side of the city?" "Oh!" The white-haired old man couldn't help but laugh. "Young man, you're from out of town, right? What, you actually don't even know that today is the day of the Bone of Buddha assembly?" "Buddha Bone assembly?" Sumo was stunned. "What Buddha bone?" "Of course it's the Buddha bone. It was said that the Buddha bone came from the Futu Sea 30,000 years ago. When it appeared, it was surrounded by 7-colored divine light and boundless magic power. However, it had been covered in dust in recent years. Therefore, the eminent monk of the Four Emptiness sect chose an auspicious day to consecrate the Buddha bone. It was said that those who saw the Buddha's bone and Buddha's light would have their lifespan increased by 1,000 years. That's why we all want to rush over and bask in the Buddhist aura. The location is Futu Temple in the west of the city. Young man, you should go too. Remember to be sincere. It's best to bring 1 or 2 Buddhist artifacts. It's not about their value, it's about your sincerity." The old man smiled and said, "There are Buddhist shops on both sides of the road. You can act according to your capabilities. I'm not picky. Thank you for your guidance," Sumo said. The old man continued walking towards the west of the city. Bone of Buddha assembly? Naturally, Sumo didn't believe in gods, because he himself was a venerable one. However, since he was in time for such a meeting, he might as well go and take a look. Chapter 930. Sangharama Planet. In Sangharama Planet, even mortals had a lifespan of about 3,000 years. Stupa City's Stupa Temple was an ancient temple with millions of years of history. In the west of Stupa City, Stupa Temple was built on a mountain. Pavilions rose and fell, and palaces were scattered. From afar, mist rose and Buddhist light lingered. Countless virtuous men and women walked slowly along the mountain path. There were many cultivators among them, but they did not ride the wind. Instead, they walked slowly with the mortals to show their respect. However, there were reincarnation level restrictions within 10 miles of Stupa Temple. It would be difficult for ordinary cultivators to ride the wind. By the time Sumo arrived at the foot of Stupa Temple, it was already past noon. However, there were still more than 2 hours before the assembly officially began. What kind of Buddha bones would the assembly be? Sumo's divine sense quietly spread out, but she did not find anything special. Sumo followed the crowd up the mountain. Stupa Temple was located halfway up the mountain. The mountain gate was set 100 feet in front of the temple. In front of the gate was a pair of strange beasts called Buddha dragons. They had the head of a lion, the body of a dragon, and a pair of wings. There was one male and one female. On top of their heads, there was a lotus incense burner. In each incense burner, there were 3 undying incense sticks. Each incense stick was as thick as a child's arm and smoke rose. On the east and west sides, there were 2 symmetrical stone squares. There were banners on each stone square. The eastern stone square's banner read, Ancient Godly Temple. The western stone square's banner read, Sangarama Pure Land. The main gate of the mountain gate was a building with 3 rooms wide. It sat on a stone platform more than 2 feet high, and there were side doors on both sides. It had to be said that Stupa Temple's ancient and imposing mountain gate fully demonstrated Stupa Temple's status in Stupa City. All virtuous men and women who passed by the mountain gate bowed, and some even kowtowed 3 times and kowtowed 9 times. Sumo bowed slightly and passed through the mountain gate. The path leading up was 7 feet wide. On both sides there were all kinds of ancient trees and steels, as well as statues of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. They were of different shapes and held Buddhist artifacts. In the eyes of ordinary people, they were Buddhas. In Sumo's eyes, they were a group of powerful cultivators. Moreover, these steels and sculptures weren't randomly placed. The entire passageway was covered in symbols of different colors, concealing many formations. Mortals passing through this passageway would not be aware of it, but cultivators passing through this passageway must be extremely careful. If his heart was filled with demonic thoughts, it was highly likely that his divine sense would be damaged. Of course, for someone at Sumo's level, it was as easy as walking on flat ground. At this moment, there were many people gathered in the tunnel, and there were monks on both sides directing the flow of people. Those monks were actually all mortals. They had calm expressions and calm attitude. This surprised Suemo quite a bit. The reason for that was because the Stupa Temple was essentially an immortal sect. Its receptionist monk could be of a lower realm, but he definitely wouldn't be a mortal. Child cultivator? However, the bearing and expression of the receiving monks were definitely not that of a child cultivator. 5th Blight Warrior? Sumo's heart gave a jolt as she thought of a possibility. She couldn't help but feel surprised. Immediately after, his divine sense swept through the monks again. As expected, their Dan-si was vast, but also like a pool of stagnant water. These monks were indeed 5th Blight Warriors, but now they didn't have any magic power and were like mortals. However, once they passed the tribulation successfully, they would become reincarnation warriors. Not bad indeed. Sumo nodded to herself. Buddhism was pure and could comprehend all living beings. It was a wise choice to undergo the tribulation in the Buddhist sect. Although this place lacked a trace of the mortal world's smoke and fire, there was also a trace of tranquility. Passing the 5th Blight tribulation in the mortal world could be accomplished in 1 lifetime, but it could also be accomplished in 3 lifetimes. In Buddhism, it might be accomplished in 3 lifetimes, but it was more stable. What surprised Sumo even more was that there were so many 5th Blight warriors in this Stupa temple. They had a high chance of becoming reincarnation cultivators in the future. Looking at it this way, the Stupa temple was rather powerful. Wouldn't the so-called 4 Emptiness sect be even more powerful? However, there were no venerables. After passing through the passageway, there was a rather spacious square in front. From afar, there were many Buddhist halls and pavilions. Today's Buddha Bone Conference would be held on this square. On the square, there was a platform that was 70 feet high. At this time, the square was surrounded by all kinds of Buddhist artifacts. They were all given by the good men and women who came to worship. Many artifacts, regardless of their value, were placed around the square. It meant that all living beings were equal. There were many people around the square, some sitting and some standing. More than a dozen greeting monks were maintaining order. There were only 3 fifth Blight warriors among these monks. The rest were break world cultivators. However, no matter what their level was, their attitudes were gentle and humble. Sumo took out a low-level treasure from her pocket. Her heart jumped, and a layer of Buddhist light covered it. Then, she placed it next to the platform. Amit Ba. Mister, please come this way. At this time, a 5th Blight warrior monk put his hands together in front of Sumo. It turned out that other than the sects and families that organized the ceremony, the stupa temple arranged places for everyone. Okay. Sumo smiled and nodded. Sumo was arranged to sit in the northeast corner of the square. Most of the people there were small businesses in Stupa City and loose cultivators from planet Sangarama. However, these cultivators did not have a high level of cultivation. The highest was only a break world cultivator. Sumo's level had been suppressed again. She was also a break world cultivator. But when these people stood on the square, they were in an orderly manner. They did not do anything out of line. Young man, you really came. Sumo looked and saw it was the white-haired old man she had met in the city. Sir. Sumo put her hands together and smiled at the old man. Just now, it was all thanks to your guidance. If you hadn't, I would have missed this Buddha Bone Conference. Ha! The white-haired old man said. Buddhists talk about fate. It looks like we are fated. This Buddha Bone Conference is definitely worth watching. I heard that this time, not only will there be Stupa High monk, but there will also be monks from far away who will preach. We are fated. If we can increase our lifespans by 1,000 years, wouldn't that be wonderful? Ha! I hope it is as you said. Sumo said. In less than 2 hours it will begin. The old man was in a good mood. At this time, on the high platform, there were already monks wearing red kasayas. Originally, the 4 sides of the high platform were filled with lotus flowers. Within the 4 lotus flowers there were Buddhist treasures. Most of them were gold, silver, colored glass, giant clams, agate, pearls, corals, and so on. In the middle of the high platform there was a square stone table. It was empty. Then, there were 2 monks wearing red kasayas. They were carrying an ancient wooden disc. They were 2 monks in the rebirth state. The diameter of the ancient wooden disc was 7 feet. There seemed to be a short person sitting on it. Unfortunately, it was covered by a red curtain. It was impossible to see what was inside. Buddha Bone? At this time, the white-haired old man beside him could not help but shout. At the same time, the entire square was filled with voices calling for the Buddha Bone. That voice was very loud, and it instantly became very noisy. Amitba, at this time, the monk carrying the Buddha Bone softly chanted the name of Buddha. His aura was calm and gentle. When it entered everyone's ears, it did not cause them any harm. At the same time, it suppressed all sounds. However, at this time, Sumo stared at the Buddha Bone. His expression slightly changed, because he felt that it was a woman's skeleton. Chapter 931. On the wooden disc, there was a skeleton. The skeleton was covered by a red curtain. Sumo's gaze swept across the curtain, but he could not see what was inside. Because there was a restriction on the curtain. A supremacy restriction? Sumo's heart skipped a beat. Because it could mean that there were no supremacies in the Chalan realm. Moreover, Sumo's intuition told him that the skeleton was a woman's skeleton. A woman's skeleton? Sumo's heart was filled with an indescribable emotion. The moment the skeleton appeared, his heart throbbed. But why was this happening? He could not explain himself. When the skeleton was placed, the two rebirth realm monks did not leave. Instead, they sat cross-legged 10 feet away from the skeleton. They clasped their hands together and softly chanted scriptures. Suemo couldn't understand the scriptures, but many of the believers around him could sing along. "Sir, what scripture is everyone chanting?" Sumo asked. "Oh." The white-haired old man was slightly stunned, then he laughed. "Young man, you don't even know the unwithering bone scripture? That is one of the best scriptures in the Qiaolan realm. Chanting this scripture, the qi will not wither, the bones will not wither, and the soul will not wither." "What?" Sumo's expression changed upon hearing this. "Unwithering bone scripture? Qi will not wither, the bones will not wither, and the soul will not wither? Wasn't this the general outline of the unwithering bone scripture that Sumo had cultivated on the bone mainland? What? The old man was stunned by Sumo's expression. "There is such a powerful scripture in this world?" Sumo hurriedly asked. The white-haired old man said proudly, "The Qiaolan ancient scripture delivers all living beings from suffering. Chanting it every day will bring endless benefit. Young man, if you chant along with everyone, you will be rewarded." Yes, Sumo nodded. But Sumo could not understand a single word of the unwithering bone scripture that the monk was chanting. It seemed to be an extremely ancient language. Originally, Sumo was just passing by Sangharama planet and wanted to see the local people and learn more about the Lazuli world. But now, he suddenly had an even greater interest. White bone unwithering art, white bone unwithering scripture. Sumo understood that behind all the coincidences between the infinite worlds, there must be karma. Could it be that the unwithered bone incantation that he cultivated originated from the Sangharama planet? Sumo obtained the unwithering bone spell from the red dust fan. Now, the ancient mortal fan was on the puppet's body. As for the unwithering art, Sumo had long since stopped deliberately cultivating it. This was because, to the current Sumo, it was no longer considered a particularly powerful technique. As long as one was in the rebirth state, one's qi would not dry up, one's bones would not dry up, and one's soul would not dry up. However, none of that was a problem for venerable ones. However, Pure Earth Star and Qiaolan were very far apart. They belonged to different space-time, and the distance between them was almost immeasurable. How could there be a similar existence between them? Sumo had questions in her mind. Therefore, he perked up a little more, wanting to find out more about it. At this moment, the entire stupa temple was chanting sutras in unison. Not only the temple, but the entire stupa city seemed to be affected. The unwithering sutra resounded through the clouds. Sumo couldn't help but narrow her eyes, because she suddenly realized that as everyone chanted, streams of wish power had gathered in the void of the stupa temple to form thin streams. This power was not particularly powerful. Ordinary cultivators would not be able to see it. However, Suemo discovered that they were accumulating, and they were constantly growing. It did not look like the wish power of a city, but a world. At that moment, the chanting of the entire stupa temple seemed to have opened a door. Countless amounts of power of will gathered from that technique. Interesting, Sumo said to herself. It seemed that this Buddhist bone assembly was not simple. It seemed to be deliberately absorbing the power of all living beings. At this moment, on the high platform, other monks appeared one after another. First, 16 monks in gray robes stood on two sides. All of them were cultivators who had lived for a lifetime. Their appearance was more like a form of etiquette. They formed a group of 4 and stood on the 4 sides of the high platform with solemn expressions. Following them were 8 monks in red kasayas. They were all at the 3rd level of the rebirth realm. After coming out in a single file, they stood next to the first 2 at the 5th level of the rebirth realm. However, they did not sit down cross-legged. And the 2 monks who led the chanting did not stand up either. However, the sound of their chanting had become softer, more like a kind of background music. Amit Ba. At this moment, a clear Buddhist chant spread throughout the entire stupa temple. Looking again, the last to appear on the high platform were 3 middle-aged monks. They were also in robes, but 2 stood in front and 1 stood behind. The 2 in front were at the 7th level of the rebirth realm, while the last monk was at the peak of the 9th level of the rebirth realm. Sumo's eyes narrowed slightly. Because even if there was some error in Jiguang's marking, and there were venerable cultivators in the Sangharama realm, the peak of the 9th level of the rebirth realm was definitely a top expert. The stupa temple actually had this kind of power. It seemed that its status in the entire Sangharama planet could not be underestimated. At this moment, the 2 monks walking in front on the high platform put their palms together and once again chanted Buddhist chants. In an instant, the entire stupa temple was silent except for the 2 monks who were still chanting. Amitba, Amitba. The 2 chants purified everything. At this moment, the entire stupa temple suddenly became quiet, calming everyone's heart. Sir, who are these 2? Sumo asked in a low voice. The 2 abbots of the stupa temple, Master Kong Tu and Master Kong Xiang. They are the true Buddhas of Sangharama, we must respect them. The white-haired old man had a pious expression. Who is behind them? Sumo asked again. I don't know which sorcerer that is. The white-haired old man shook his head. I have been worshipping Buddha in the stupa temple for many years, but I have never seen this sorcerer. Sumo nodded silently. I am Kong Tu, representing all the monks of the stupa temple, to welcome all benefactors to this Bone of Buddha assembly. Kong Tu put his palms together and looked around. His gaze was very gentle. The Dharma is boundless, shapeless, and formless. Today's Bone of Buddha assembly will be completed by my senior Kong Jian. Kong Tu moved to the side, and the monks behind them took a step forward. Senior Kong Jian has been in seclusion for 10,000 years. Today, the Bone of Buddha will come out. The light of the Bone of Buddha will illuminate all living beings. Anyone who sees the light of the Bone of Buddha today will be blessed and live a long life, with immeasurable merit, Kong Tu said and directly retreated to the side. Kong Jian did not say much, only putting his palms together and bowing to all living beings. Sumo noticed that this monk at the peak of the 9th level of the rebirth realm seemed to have a special mark between his eyebrows. It seemed to be the word Kong. Following that, there was no complicated ceremony, nor any trivial process. Kong Jian walked directly to the stone table and then formed a seal with his hands. Rebirth seal. Sumo's eyebrows twitched. That was because Kong Jian had used a reincarnation-level Dharma spell right from the start. If it was just to lift the curtain, there was no need at all. However, that monk Kong Jian was extremely cautious. Whoosh, looking again, the red curtain covering the Bone of Buddha floated up. A faint white light suddenly spread out. It was indeed a female skeleton sitting cross-legged. The most peculiar thing was that within her eye sockets, there was an endless faint white flame. At the moment that the female skeleton was lifted, 2 red shadows quietly landed in the stupa temple. Chapter 932. Sikong Sect, the number 1 sect in Sangharama Temple. In fact, in most cases, it was only passed down by word of mouth among some Sangharama cultivators. The Sikong sect was a mysterious existence to the relatively low-level cultivators of Sangharama world. The Sikong sect was a parasitic existence. Normally, only rebirth-level cultivators would know about this phenomenon. If their level was not high enough, they could not understand the structure of this parasitic world. The space where the Sikong star was located was completely different from Sangharama planet. However, it existed because of Sangharama planet. From the perspective of Haoyu, it could be said that the Sikong star was in the shadow world of Sangharama planet. On Sangharama planet, Monk Cg looked at Sumo, Wang Yu, and Xin Ming's transformation and was full of praise. The demonic monarch's secret technique is incomparably mysterious. Monk Cg's words were mostly sincere. He was at the third stage of the Venerable Realm and was definitely a powerful cultivator. However, it was the first time he had seen a secret technique like sumo's that could change the appearance of others and make it so that high-level cultivators could not see through it. Demon King, your technique is really good. Xin Ming also smiled and said, if there is a chance, can you teach me? Sure. Sumo said. Insignificant skill. Wang Yu said lightly. In her eyes, Xiao Luo was not as good as Mu. What's more, this wind wheel secret technique was really ineffective against her. When the ghost eye was opened, Xin Ming was still Xin Ming, and Sumo was still Sumo. Sumo smiled faintly and did not care. However, you must be careful not to speak when you see others. If you really want to speak, don't use your own voice. Just now, you have all heard the voice of Si Tong and Four Eyes. It should not be a problem to imitate it. Ba. I understand. Xin Ming put his hands together and pretended to be serious. At that moment, it was exactly the same as Si Tong. What do you think? Xin Ming giggled. Not bad. Sumo said, you can pass off the fake as the real one. Is it fun to flatter each other like this? Wang Yu rolled her eyes at Sumo and Xin Ming. If you're not going to the Four Emptiness Temple, I'm leaving. If you're going, can you stop dawdling? Xin Ming stuck out his tongue. She was both afraid and in love with Wang Yu. Because the tears of the river of forgetfulness back then, Wang Yu's personality was not gentle. Back in the magical fantasy mansion, Wang Yu's words were absolute. She did not dare to disobey Wang Yu's words. Of Wang Yu, Tong. She did not dare. All right, let's go. Suemo smiled and said to Four Desolations, open the passageway. When we arrive at the Four Emptiness Temple, we'll pretend that we've completed our mission and return. As for the other matters, you can act according to circumstances. At this moment, Sumo had already materialized an ancient wooden tray. He was like Kong Jian, holding the ancient wooden tray with fake white bones on it. However, the white bone wasn't completely fake, because it was transformed from Sumo's own skeleton puppet. As you command. Monk CG bowed to Sumo. Now, he had no other choice. The soul blood was in Sumo's hands. Only by doing his best to help Sumo would he have a chance at survival. Looking again, Monk CG started to form seals with his hands. In an instant, a secret door appeared in the void. It was exactly the same as the formation that appeared when Monk 4 Solitude came just now. Inside the black hole, there was a dim light. Monk CG was in front, followed by Sumo, followed by Xin Ming, and finally Wang Yu. The length of the space-time tunnel did not matter. Even Sumo did not have a clear concept of time in the space-time array. He only felt that after less than a quarter of an hour, their eyes lit up. Moonlight? That was Sumo's first reaction. Oh, what a big moon! Xin Ming said as quietly as he could. At this time, they had already stepped out of the space-time array. In the void, there was indeed a supermoon. Moreover, it was blue, emitting a very enchanting blue light. It hung in the void, making everything look like a dream. It was a beautiful scene. On a mountain not far away, there was a group of very old temple buildings. That blue moon is actually planet Sangharama. Monk 4 Solitude said, however, if you search for planet Sangharama in that direction on planet 4 Void, you will never find it. It can be seen as an illusion. At the same time, it is the only visible star on planet 4 Void. Almost all of the spiritual energy on planet 4 Void comes from planet Sangharama. Sumo couldn't help but frown. But, the spiritual energy on planet 4 Void is much denser than on planet Sangharama? Of course. Monk 4 Solitude laughed. Because 3/4 of the spiritual energy on planet Sangharama is supplied to planet 4 Void. This is the relationship between the bright and dark stars of Lazuli world. Sumo and the others listened and nodded. That temple in front, is that the 4 Void sect? Sumo asked. That's right. 300 miles ahead is the Four Void Mountains Four Void Temple. Monk Four Solitude said, "Usually, the Four Void sect doesn't care much about anything on planet Sangarama. On the 18 planets of planet Sangarama, there are existences like Futu Temple. On the surface, they look like independent sects, but behind them is the Four Void sect. There don't seem to be many disciples of the Four Void sect." Sumo narrowed her eyes and looked at the ancient temple in the distance. She spread out her divine sense and sensed that there weren't many disciples in the temple. 3,000 Buddhas, one venerable per 100. Monk Four Solitude laughed. "What do you mean?" Sumo said. "The entire Four Void sect actually has no more than 3,000 disciples. These disciples are all direct disciples of the Four Void sect. Their cultivation is profound and their potential is huge. And for every 100 people, there will be one venerable." Monk Four Solitude explained. "One venerable per 100? Sumo couldn't help but frown. Such a rate of venerable attainment was unheard of, because there weren't many cultivators who could become venerables from the rebirth realm. But now there are a total of 12 venerables in that ancient temple. But there are 3,372 other disciples." At this moment, Wang Yu, who was behind them, said plainly. When he said this, Sumo was still fine, because she knew how powerful Wang Yu's ghost eye was. Monk Four Solitude's face was full of shock, because there was a peak venerable level formation on the Four Void Mountain. Even Sumo might not be able to investigate everything so clearly at this moment. 3,000 Buddhas, one venerable per 100 is just a saying. Of course, the Sikong temple was exaggerating. "Miss, you don't have to be so calculative." Monk Four Solitude smiled and explained, "Now, there are still a few venerables wandering outside. Now, excluding me, there are still Si Tong and Si Mu. There should be a total of 15 venerable level cultivators in the Four Void sect. Since that's the ratio, it's not normal." Sumo thought for a while and said, "I'm afraid it's because of that Black Lotus? Quickly becoming a venerable. Otherwise, it's impossible to have such a ratio." "Demon King is wise." Monk Four Solitude let out a long sigh and said, "That's right. Actually, in the cave abode at the back of the Four Void Mountain, there has always been a Black Lotus. Cultivators above the 7th level of Rebirth Realm in the Four Void Temple can go there regularly. With the Black Lotus, our cultivation speed will increase by leaps and bounds. Unfortunately, this will make your foundations unstable. It's like pulling up seedlings to help them grow." Sumo frowned and said, "You will only become tools and puppets. In the end, you will be exhausted and it will be hard for you to attain Tao." Monk Four Solitude looked at the Four Void Temple from afar and laughed helplessly, but did not say anything. Chapter 933. The red curtain rose and the white bones appeared. Just as Sumo expected, there was a skeleton woman on the ancient wooden plate. The entire skeleton was in a meditative posture. There was a faint halo of light above the white bones, but it was not conspicuous. Only the flames in the eye sockets were faintly pulsating, quite special. Sumo frowned. That was because the skeleton gave him a familiar feeling. Unfortunately, nothing could be seen from a set of white bones. Whoosh, whoosh. At this time, all the good men and women of Futu Temple bowed to the Buddhist bones at the same time. However, the mortals and the cultivators of the mortal realm all knelt on the ground, while the cultivators of the immortal realm and above bowed deeply. At this moment, the immortal and mortal levels could be seen. Sumo naturally bowed slightly. In fact, with his status, he did not need to bow, but he did not want to be too special. What surprised Sumo was the white-haired old man next to him. Because the white-haired old man did not kneel, but bowed. "My bones are not good, I can't kneel anymore." The white-haired old man sighed, as if talking to himself, but also explaining to the people next to him. "But, the Buddha is merciful, he will not blame me." Sumo couldn't help but sneer in his heart. As if I would believe you! You rotten old man! At that moment, Sumo was sure that he must have misjudged. This white-haired old man was hale and hearty. To be able to go to Futu Mountain alone, how could he not kneel? The white-haired old man clearly did not want to kneel to the Buddhist bones. However, Sumo still could not see through this white-haired old man? Could it be that this old man was a Lotus Knight? Sumo was a little hesitant, because it was really hard to believe. In the small Sangharan world, she actually encountered a Lotus Knight? That was a little too inconceivable. But if he was not a Lotus Knight, how could he not see through the other? Therefore, Sumo still felt that everything was a little strange. However, this Buddhist bone assembly made Sumo feel more and more interested. She did not know if it was a blessing or a curse. At this time, Kong Jian, who was on the high platform, had already begun to recite a new scripture. Sumo still couldn't understand the scripture. At the same time, Kong Jian's hand seals changed again. It was still the reincarnation formula. Sumo narrowed her eyes. He could tell that the monk, Kong Jian, had been suppressing the aura of the Buddha bone. He controlled the Buddhist bone chi to 3 feet in front of him. On the other hand, the few rebirth-level monks in red kasayas had already formed a special boundary. In other words, the time and space between the Buddha bone and Futu temple were independent of each other. It was a top-notch reincarnation boundary. That was definitely not the so-called opening ceremony. Sumo was sure. Unfortunately, the crowd of mortals couldn't see anything. Even cultivators below the rebirth realm couldn't see any clues. At this moment, Sumo understood that there must be an unspeakable secret behind this Buddha bone light consecration. At this moment, Kong Jian's voice suddenly rose a few notches. The loud sound reverberated throughout the entire Futu temple. The chanting of the 2 rebirth-level monks, who hadn't stopped, lowered a few notches. However, the pitch of their voices complemented each other. The entire Futu temple, and even the entire Futu city, echoed with a strange response. Ku-ma-mi. The monks in Futu temple and all the cultivators participating in the Buddha Bone Conference seemed to be involuntarily chanting. It was like a resonance, but it was also like hypnosis. Sumo was clear-headed. However, he saw that a few break-world cultivators not far away had entered a state of chanting. The white-haired old man next to him also began chanting. Unfortunately, the white-haired old man's chanting was not of the same tune as the others. Clearly, the white-haired old man was just making up the numbers. Seeing this, Sumo followed suit and began to sing along. This process lasted for a full 15 minutes. At this moment, the entire Futu temple was like a training field. Everyone was chanting. They were numb and involuntarily chanting. Their eyes gradually became blank. With Futu temple as the center, the entire Futu city fell into this state. Everything was neat and tidy. Kong Jian was on the high platform, watching everything. An inexplicable smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. At that moment, Sumo's heart went cold. Because he had a bad premonition. Looking again, Kong Jian's hand seal changed. It was a seal that Sumo had never seen before. Whoosh! A spiritual wind suddenly blew on the high platform. In the void, the power of will that had been faintly discernible was now clearly visible. They formed several rivers in the void. At the same time, a pillar of light appeared above the heads of all the virtuous men and women in Futu temple. The light of life. Everyone's life was being absorbed by Kong Jian. They gathered and appeared in the void above the high platform. What the white-haired old man had said earlier was right. It was indeed 1,000 years of life. However, it was not giving but being taken. Every mortal present had at least 1,000 years of life taken. As for the cultivators, 1/3 of their life was taken, depending on their realm. This was a massacre. However, there was no bloody light. Amitabha. At that moment, a compassionate Buddhist voice came from the back mountain of Futu temple. Kong Jian, stop. You will destroy all living beings in Sangha temple. You are guilty. The voice was old and sounded like an extremely old monk. Humph. However, Kong Jian snorted coldly and did not care. The seal in his hand did not stop. Not only did it not stop, but it also began to speed up. At that moment, the faces of many believers in Futu Temple were pale. Some of the elders had already fallen to the ground in despair. This was because they did not have 1,000 years of life left. However, what was Kong Jian trying to do? Sumo had many questions in her mind. There was also the light of life above Sumo's head, but it was not being absorbed. At that moment, the white-haired old man suddenly said to Sumo, "He wants to devour that skeleton." Oh! Sumo was taken aback. What's the use? To advance to the pinnacle of the supremacy realm. The white-haired old man said. Sumo could not help but frown. That skeleton could help him reach the pinnacle of the supremacy realm? If that was the case, it was a huge temptation. No one at the pinnacle of the reincarnation realm could resist such a temptation. Buzz, boom, as soon as the white-haired old man finished speaking, the skeleton on the high platform was already rising slowly. At this moment, the millions of yearning and longevity energy in the void actually formed a lotus platform under the white bones. With my heart, I summon the skeleton to be reborn. At that moment, Kong Jian's hand seal changed again. At the same time, he opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of soul blood. Whoosh! As soon as the soul blood was spat out, it turned into a rain of blood. In an instant, the entire sky of Futu City was dyed blood red. The Buddha bone was also covered with a layer of red light. Buzz! The Buddha bone vibrated, and the white light in its eye sockets suddenly expanded. Sigh. At that moment, a helpless sigh came from the back of Futu Temple. At the same time, a red shadow suddenly flew out from a corner of Futu Temple. The red shadow headed straight for the Buddha bone on the high platform. Instantly, murderous intent filled the air. Chapter 934. Within the red shadow, there was another red shadow. This was something that Su Mo had not expected. On the other hand, the monks on the high platform seemed to be prepared. They knew that today's Bone of Buddha assembly would be exciting. Whoosh! 2 of the 8 rebirth realm cultivators leaped into the air. Under their robes, there were Buddhist staffs. The 2 staffs crossed each other and headed straight for the red shadow. Everything happened in an instant. At this time, other than Sumo and the white-haired old man, everyone else in the Stupa temple had fallen into a deep sleep. In other words, although they were chanting, they did not feel anything. To them, time and space were completely still. Boom, crack, when he looked again, an immortal sword suddenly appeared in the red figure's hand. The divine sword's green light surged, its tail tens of feet long. It was a top-notch, venerable divine weapon. The red shadow flipped his wrist and split the divine sword. The green light swept past and the 2 Buddhist staffs were cut in half. However, the green light's power did not diminish, and the red shadow had no intention of stopping. Poof, poof. The green light was like a sickle, reaping 2 heads. The 2 round heads were filled with shock, as if they had died with grievances. Because they did not expect to be killed in one move. Bang! Blood splattered everywhere as the 2 heads exploded in their shock. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. 2 cultivators at the 3rd level of the rebirth realm died in an instant. Practically at the same time, Grandmaster Kong Tu and Grandmaster Kong Xiang made their move. They were 2 rebirth realm cultivators. Other than Kong Jian, they were the strongest experts in the Stupa temple. Heaven bind! Earth trap! The 2 monks shouted loudly. They did not use their divine weapons, but instead used their spells. In the air, 2 beams of light attacked the red shadow from above and below. It was a sealing spell. At the same time, the remaining 6 rebirth realm cultivators also used their spells. They had set up a boundary, but did not expect it to be broken by the red shadow. At this time, they tried to use their spells again to block the red shadow. However, the red shadow's spells were one step faster than theirs. The red figure held the sword in one hand and formed a seal with the other. Hand seals with one hand were rare to begin with. However, the red figure's speed was extremely fast. His use of the seal was breathtaking. At this moment, Sumo frowned slightly. That was because that red figure was a woman, and he had seen those hand seals before. However, he had yet to see the face of the red shadow. Following the red-clothed woman's spell, the spells set up by the monks began to collapse in an instant. The red-clothed woman's body suddenly emitted a green light. The green light was like the sea, and the many Dharma forms were unstoppable. Blue sea inheritance. Vast sea manifestation art. Sumo could not help but sigh in her heart. He could now confirm who the red-clothed woman was. However, he did not expect to meet her here. Moreover, why did she snatch the Buddha bone? Sumo was puzzled. But at this moment the situation on the high platform changed again. Kong Tu and Kong Xiang, the two monks at the 7th stage of the rebirth realm, were unable to stop the lady in red. Therefore, Kong Jian finally made his move. He knew that if he had acted later, the others could have died under the red-clothed woman's sword. Kong Jian was at the peak of the rebirth realm, and so was the red-clothed woman. Buddha is merciful. Kong Jian's face was full of pity. The string of Buddhist beads around his neck suddenly flew up and swept towards the red-clothed woman. It was also a venerable divine weapon. At the same time, the female skeleton that Kong Jian had spat out a mouthful of soul blood also went straight towards the red-clothed woman. The red-clothed woman thrust the immortal sword in her hand outwards. Chi. Kong Jian's Buddhist beads were directly cut by the immortal sword. However, the Buddhist beads did not dissipate. However, the red-clothed woman's wrist turned, and her sword shot out like a shooting star. Bang bang! The 108 Buddhist beads were all knocked away by the immortal sword in an instant. However, the red-clothed woman still retreated. She was not afraid of the monks of the Futu Temple, but she did not want to damage the Buddha bone. Although the red-clothed woman retreated, she was still suspended in the void of the Futu Temple. Kong Jian did not attack after forcing the red-clothed woman back. He wanted to maintain a delicate balance and then complete the awakening of the Buddha bone. As long as he could devour the Buddha bone, everything would be worth it. To go from the peak of the rebirth realm to the peak of the venerable realm was something that many cultivators did not even dare to dream of. However, now that he had such an opportunity, so what if he had to suppress all the beings of the Sangha temple? Whoosh! The battle between the two sides stopped. At this time, Sumo finally saw the red-clothed woman's face clearly, especially her eyes. Her eyes were deep and bottomless, as if they contained thousands of magical powers. Wang Yu. Sumo's guess was right. The red-clothed female cultivator was indeed Wang Yu. At this time, the white-haired old man beside Sumo smiled faintly. Is that your old friend? However, you must not be impatient and do not attack first. There will definitely be others coming later. The Sangha temple still has some experts. Sumo could not help but ask, "May I ask who you are?" The white-haired old man shook his head and laughed. "Don't ask me who I am. However, don't worry, we are friends, not enemies. At the crucial moment, I will lend you a helping hand. You have to get your hands on that skeleton. It is very important to you." Sumo did not understand, but the current situation did not allow her to ask more. On the high platform, the monks of the Futu temple tightly protected the Buddha bone. Kong Jian looked at Wang Yu and asked, "Female benefactor, where are you from? Why did you kill my junior brother and steal my Buddha bone?" When Wang Yu heard this, she laughed coldly. "Futu temple, you deceived the world. That Buddha bone did not belong to your temple in the first place. Now you want to use the wishes and lifespan of all beings to awaken it, then use it for your own selfish purposes. If that is the case, then everyone can take it. I also want it, why can't I? Kong Jian heard this, but shook his head. Female benefactor, you are wrong. This Buddha bone came from the Futu Sea, and has been enshrined in my temple for tens of thousands of years. It belongs to my temple. Now, I have gathered the power of all beings to help me ascend. After that, I will naturally give back to all beings. Why can't I? Monk, why do you have to lie to all beings? Wang Yu laughed coldly. I do not want to help all beings, I only want to use this white bone to ascend. So, I do not want to talk nonsense with you. I only want the white bone. Wang Yu's personality was indeed one that did not like to talk nonsense. So, she made her move again. Wang Yu's sorcery came from Mo Lang and Huan Hua. She was confident that she was invincible in the same realm. She could even fight a first-stage venerable. Moreover, she had a backup plan. So, she had no scruples. Whoosh, then, she gently pinched 3 fingers on one hand, and a demonic flower suddenly bloomed on her fingertips. It was the enchantment of illusory flowers. Chapter 935. Charm of Fantasy Flower. Sumo's expression changed slightly. That was because, to him, it represented a complicated emotion. In the past, in the 3 realms, the children of the desolate sea did not dare to cry at night when they heard the name of the heavenly maiden. The cultivators of the divine continent were shocked when they heard the name of the illusory flower. The fairy fantasy flower was the nightmare of the divine land. Charm of illusory flowers was one of the goddess art. Legend had it that the enchantment of the fantasy flower was a unique species of the 3 realms. However, it was not an item of the sea desolate state, but a flower of the demon realm. It was the number 1 illusory spirit flower in the 3 dimensions, and it was divided into the colors of white, black, blue, crimson, green, violet, and yellow. Back then, under normal circumstances, the fairies mostly used red and blue flowers. Amu had once used the blue fantasy flower charm. As long as you have the slightest flaw in your heart, you will definitely fall for the charm of illusory flowers. Even immortals and Buddhas would not be able to escape. At this moment, Wang Yu's first move was actually a black demonic flower. A black flower bloomed in the void. Under the red light, it looked even more demonic. In an instant, 1 turned into 10, 10 into 100, 100 into 1,000, 1,000 into 1,000,000,000. Black flowers filled the sky and a strange fragrance wafted through the air. The entire Stupa city was like a dream. At that moment, all the chanting in Stupa temple and even the entire Stupa city came to a halt. The enchantment of illusory flowers had directly changed the situation. The expressions of all the monks on the high platform changed. Other than Kong Jian, even Kong Tu and Kong Xiang, who were at the 7th layer of Rebirth Realm, were at a loss. They all stopped chanting and entered their own illusory worlds. Demonis! Kong Jian couldn't help but shout. This time, he used a Buddhist secret technique. He had wanted to give the monks of Futu Temple a severe warning and dispel the illusion. However, not only was it futile, 2 of the monks in the 3rd layer of Rebirth Realm pounced on him. The charm of Fantasy Flower was an invincible illusion technique. At this moment, in the eyes of the 2 Rebirth Realm monks, Kong Jian was their enemy. 2 monks in the 3rd realm of Rebirth raised their staffs and smashed them towards Kong Jian. The monk, Kong Jian, could not help but raise his eyebrows. With a thought, the Buddhist beads that Wang Yu had knocked away suddenly flew back to him. Puff! There were 2 consecutive sounds. 2 Buddhist prayer beads were inserted into the foreheads of the 2 monks. At the same time, Kong Jian's hand seals changed. Looking again, the spiritual energy of the 2 monks began to be absorbed by the Buddhist beads and then poured into the woman's Buddhist bone. In an instant, the 2 monks at the 3rd realm of Rebirth Realm turned into 2 dried corpses. Even Sumo couldn't help but frown when she saw that scene. Monk Kong Jian was indeed a cruel and merciless person. One had to know that he had absorbed 2 samsara-level disciples. Ha ha! The white-haired old man couldn't help but laugh coldly. Buddha is merciful. At this time, Wang Yu's immortal sword attacked again. Her immortal sword was specially forged by Wang Ju. It was a top-notch venerable divine weapon. Once the enchantment of fantasy flowers was unleashed, all the other monks, except Kong Jian, lost their ability to fight. Even Kong Jian had to rely on a treasure to protect himself. Wang Yu's sword was extremely fast. The sword went straight for the space between Kong Jian's eyebrows. Kong Jian reacted quickly. Under his control, the woman's Buddhist bone once again blocked in front of him. Wang Yu's eyes narrowed slightly. Fear of harming the rat. However, she had been blocked by Kong Jian's Buddhist bone twice. With Wang Yu's character, how could he take such a threat? Chi. Wang Yu's sword did not change at all and went straight for the Buddhist bone. This time, it was Kong Jian's turn to be shocked. He didn't expect the red-robed female cultivator to be so ruthless. She would rather damage the white bone than stop. Whoosh, Kong Jian wanted to protect the Buddhist bone. Therefore, he moved the Buddhist bone to the left with a thought. However, this left the space in front of him wide open. Puff, Wang Yu's sword directly pierced through his right shoulder. In an instant, blood splattered. Although it wasn't a fatal wound, Kong Jian's expression changed. Between experts, a split second could determine life and death. Just now, he had dodged a bullet. However, he knew in his heart that he was no match for the red-robed female cultivator. Today, it would be impossible for him to smoothly devour the Buddhist bone. Thinking of this, Kong Jian hurriedly retreated. At the same time, he crushed a black jade slip in his hand. Whoosh, as soon as the black jade slip was crushed, endless black smoke spread out. The black smoke dispersed in the void and gradually formed a circle. A black hole appeared in the circle. It seemed to be a transportation formation. Boom, when he looked again, the black hole suddenly opened, and 3 monks slowly walked out from it. However, the 3 monks were wearing black monk robes. It was the color of the rarely seen monk robes. The venerable realm. Sumo couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. The 3 monks were all venerable realm cultivators. It seemed that Ji Guang's record of there being no venerable realm cultivators in the Qilan realm was indeed inaccurate. The 3 monks in black all put their palms together, their expressions cold. There was a mark of Kong between their eyebrows. The mark was also black, looking somewhat strange and dark. As soon as they appeared, their bodies suddenly emitted the pressure of the venerable realm. The enchantment of flowers in the void was dispersed in one go. The gap between their realms was obvious. The power behind Futu Temple has appeared. The white-haired old man said. Oh! Sumo was stunned. The monks of the 4 Void Venerable Realm. The white-haired old man said. The 4 Void sect is the largest sect in the Qilan realm. Many of the temples in the Qilan realm are opened by their disciples. However, the cultivators of the 4 Void sect do not show themselves easily. This Futu temple is an important temple of the 4 Void sect. Sumo nodded when she heard this. Amit Ba. The 3 monks in black chanted at the same time. Their leader was a 3rd stage venerable, and the 2 behind him were 1st stage venerable. When Wang Yu saw the 3 venerable realm cultivators, she couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. At the same time, she suddenly retreated, maintaining a relatively safe distance from them. After all, she was not a venerable yet. Facing 3 venerable realm cultivators, how could she dare to act rashly? Senior brothers, save me! Kong Jian shouted loudly. Junior brother Kong Jian, calm down. The black-clothed monk who led the group said, You don't have to worry about anything since you summoned us here. That Buddha bone is definitely yours. We'll be waiting for you to return to the sect. Thank you, senior brother CG. Kong Jian knelt down in midair and spoke respectfully. Sumo couldn't help but ask, Return to the sect? The white-haired old man said, Looks like Kong Jian made a mistake and was demoted to the Futu temple. I think he'll return once he advances into the Exalt realm, said the white-haired old man. Who are you? Meanwhile, the monk who led the group asked Wang Yu. Me? Wang Yu laughed coldly. I'm an independent cultivator. I've come today for the Buddha bone. The Buddha bone doesn't belong to anyone. Since it can assist in one's cultivation, then it's naturally available to everyone. Ha! The monk couldn't help but chuckle when he heard this. Benefactor, you're right. The Buddha bone really is available to everyone. Today, if you can defeat us, you will be able to win. This Buddha bone belongs to you. But, if I can't beat him, I'll have to go. Not only will you not be able to obtain this Buddha bone, but you will also not be able to leave. Whether it is the Sangarama planet or the Futu temple, they are not places where you can do whatever you want. Benefactor, think carefully. Monk 4 Desolation said calmly and coldly, if you repent now, you'll regret it. As long as you leave behind your immortal sword, we can write off everything that happened before. When Wang Yu heard this, the corners of his mouth curled up. He could not help but look into Futu Temple. Chapter 936. Killing intent was everywhere in Futu Temple. Wang Yu's gaze seemed to sweep past Sumo and the white-haired old man without stopping. However, Sumo knew that as long as Wang Yu saw her, he would definitely be able to see through her disguise. The ghost eye had a special penetrating power. It could see through all illusions better than the demon eye. However, Wang Yu did not seem to be looking for Sumo. Instead, he was only looking at the living beings in Futu Temple. Poor believers! Wang Yu muttered to himself, but at the same time, he seemed to be talking to Monk CG. All of you will be buried with your so-called faith. Ba! Monk CG raised his brows enchanted. At this moment, he knew that the female cultivator in red would not give up without a fight. Whoosh! At this moment, there was a fluctuation in the void of Futu Temple. Another female cultivator in red appeared next to Wang Yu. Their appearance and attire were identical. At first glance, they looked like clones of each other. Monk CG and the other monks were slightly stunned. That was because these two female cultivators were clearly the same person. At this moment, Sumo could tell the difference at a glance. That was because their eyes were different. Shen Ming. Sumo really did not expect Wang Yu and Shen Ming to be here. This pair of ghosts was not ordinary. They were special existences in the three realms, and the cultivators behind them were not ordinary people. Sister, let's kill them, Shen Ming said coldly. Ba! Monk CG could also tell that they were different. He could not help but smile faintly. Female benefactors, do you think you can kill us with your cultivation? That's impossible. It seems that you have no intention to repent. Then don't blame me for being heartless. With that, Monk CG did not personally take action. Instead, he retreated. The two venerable realm cultivators behind him took a step forward. They had calm expressions and actually bowed slightly to Wang Yu and Shen Ming. Ba! This poor monk is Sitong. Ba! This poor monk has 4 eyes. The two monks looked refined and courteous. Their dharma was profound, but there was a black aura behind them. What they look like is completely different from what they look like inside. Sumo's gaze froze. In theory, Wang Yu and Shen Ming were no match for the two first-stage martial venerable realm cultivators, but he also knew that their family inheritance was extremely powerful. Therefore, they should all have the ability to challenge those of a higher level. However, Sumo did not dare to let her guard down. He absolutely could not let anything happen to Wang Yu and Shen Ming before his eyes. Otherwise, how would he explain himself to Amu and Shen Yan? Chi, Wang Yu and Shen Ming didn't say anything else. Instead, they attacked immediately. Both of them were at the peak of the rebirth realm, but they were unable to advance. Because each of them had their own inner demons. However, their battle prowess was indeed formidable. The immortal sword in Wang Yu's hand stabbed toward Si Tong. On the other hand, the spear in Shen Ming's hand was a long spear. At first glance, that spear looked like the Azura spear. However, Sumo knew that the real Azura spear was in Shen Yan's hands. This spear was most likely forged later. However, it was also a top-notch venerable divine weapon. Whether it was in terms of spells or treasures, the two of them were definitely not bad. They could put up a fight against a first-stage martial venerable realm cultivator. However, the difference in realms was still a difference in realms. They did not have the aura of a venerable. On the other hand, the two monks, Si Tong and Si Mu, were making hand seals at the same time. The black aura on their bodies instantly surged like dragons and clouds. Neither of them took out their treasures. Not every venerable realm cultivator had a venerable divine weapon. Of course, it was more likely that they did not think that they needed it. Whoosh, on the other hand, the black aura behind them instantly took shape. One wrapped around Wang Yu, while the other wrapped around Shen Ming. Wang Yu's sword and Shen Ming's spear were directly ignored by them. This was because the moment the two divine weapons pierced towards them, they actually disappeared from where they stood. Black escape technique. The white-haired old man saw this and could not help but sneer. The Four Emptiness sect, interesting. Sumo listened to the white-haired old man's words and did not understand what he meant. At this time, he did not ask in detail, but focused on the battle. Wang Yu and Shen Ming could not help but frown when their attacks failed. However, Wang Yu's eyes flashed, and she directly took a step to the left. The immortal sword in her hand stabbed forward. However, there was nothing in that direction at all in the eyes of ordinary cultivators. However, as soon as Wang Yu's sword arrived, a cry of surprise came from the void. On the other hand, the black aura in the void suddenly dispersed. At the same time, a five-colored glow appeared under Wang Yu's feet. The black aura that entangled her just now instantly dissipated. Forbidden map. Sumo could not help but secretly nod. There was actually a forbidden map and restriction under Wang Yu's feet. It was an extremely powerful defensive technique, and ordinary venerables could not enter her body. However, Sumo could not tell whether it was Wang Yu's own forbidden map or Wang Ju's. On the other hand, Shen Ming's side was almost in the same situation as Wang Yu's. When Wang Yu saw through the two monks' black escape technique, Shen Ming could also see through him. Her spear even pierced the four-eyed monk's monk robe. They had telepathy. Whoosh, the two monks, Si Tong and Si Mu, appeared at the same time 1,000 feet away. Their expressions were no longer as calm as before. This was because Wang Yu and Shen Ming's battle prowess was somewhat beyond their imagination. On the other hand, the two monks formed hand seals again. However, the sorcery this time was clearly far more powerful than before. Black aura appeared above their heads. Moreover, the black aura gradually formed a black lotus. Black lotus. Sumo could not help but be moved. Hee. The white-haired old man also could not help but sneer. Lotus suppression. The two monks shouted at the same time. On the other hand, the lotus above their heads instantly expanded. The two lotuses each occupied half of the void. It could be said that they blotted out the sky and covered the sun. The entire Stupa mountain was under their sorcery. Once the black lotus appeared, it was like the end of the world. However, the people in Stupa Temple did not feel it, and the entire Stupa city was in a state of deep sleep. It was a kind of indiscriminate attack sorcery. At this moment, the entire Stupa Temple, and even the entire Stupa city, was about to be destroyed. All of this was just as Wang Yu had said. All of his believers would be buried with him. However, this was a battle between venerables. Not destroying a single star was already merciful. Moreover, the Four Emptiness sect monks did not even consider these problems. Believers were just their tools. They were not true Buddhists at all. At this moment, Wang Yu and Shen Ming were actually using different sorcery. Wang Yu's body emitted a green light, and within the green light, a lotus appeared. However, the lotus was green. Xin Ming's body emitted a red light, and within the red light, a fire lotus appeared. Amazing! The white-haired old man could not help but praise. As for Sumo, she could see that one of them was using an ocean sorcery, while the other was using a ghost lord's immortal technique. They were both top-tier sorcery of the three realms. Boom, boom, the four lotuses collided, and the entire stupa temple was enveloped by a boundless force, instantly turning it into ashes. Chapter 937. The power of a supremacy engulfed the entire stupa city. In an instant, many believers in stupa temple were reduced to dust. There were only a dozen monks left in the entire stupa temple. They were all on the high platform. Among the spectators, only Sumo and the white-haired old man were left. However, at this moment, they were all concealing their auras and hiding in a dark corner. They did not want to show themselves. At the same time, the aftermath of the battle was still spreading. Half of Stupa City had been reduced to ruins, and the number of dead was uncountable. Sumo's expression was calm, while the white-haired old man sighed. After Stupa Temple was destroyed, a withered old monk appeared in the void behind the mountain. His body was actually wrapped in black chains. The old monk wore a gray robe that was full of patches. It was a robe made of cloth. He was a Stage 7 Rebirth Realm expert. Previously, he was the one who had advised Kong Jian. Amit Ba. The withered old monk had a mournful expression. He looked at Kong Jian and said, "Kong Jian, no matter where you come from, you have let down Stupa. All living beings are innocent." Senior brother Kong Nian. Kong Jian said coldly, "The path of cultivation is naturally filled with white bones. Today, I will spare your life on account of us being fellow disciples. I will release your seal and you may leave." Spare my life on account of being a senior brother? Ha! Kong Jian, how can I be worthy of being your senior brother? Master Kong Nian shook his head and smiled bitterly. If the path of cultivation is filled with white bones, then what is the point of cultivation? Buddhas cultivate to save all living beings, not to destroy them. How are your actions any different from those of a devil? Now that Stupa is dead, how can I live alone? With that, Kong Nian formed a seal with both hands. It was an absolute death seal. There is still a true Buddha in Stupa Temple. The white-haired old man sighed softly. However, he did not make any move. That was because everyone had their own destiny. That Master Kong Nian had come to transcend all living beings. Whoosh! Once Kong Nian's absolute death seal was formed, his body emitted endless Buddhist light. The Buddhist light turned milky white. Within it, countless Buddhist lotuses appeared. At that moment, the black chain could no longer seal him. Amitba, the Buddha is merciful. Master Kong Nian sighed sorrowfully. I am willing to help the aggrieved souls of this battle enter the cycle of reincarnation. Boom, hua. Kong Nian's Buddha body began to dissipate. It wasn't a self-detonation, but a gentle dissipation. The light of Buddha shone, bathing all living beings. At that moment, the entire Stupa city and even Sangarama planet were illuminated by the light. The sound of Sanskrit rose in all directions, as if transcending. Countless vengeful souls turned into white mist and returned to the cycle of reincarnation. The entire process did not take long. The three monks from the Four Emptiness sect didn't do much. They frowned at everything. Perhaps they still had a trace of Buddhist faith in their hearts. Therefore, they did not stop Kong Nian from attaining perfection in the end. Kong Nian was the last Buddha of the Futu Temple and even the Sangarama planet. After Kong Nian's death, there was no Buddha in Sangarama. In the battle just now, the four lotuses had collided and ended in a tie. The two monks, Si Tong and Si Mu, stood where they were. Their expressions were normal, and their breathing was steady. On the other hand, Wang Yu and Xin Ming's faces were slightly pale. After all, there was a gap in their realms. At this moment, it was as if they were to reenact the battle just now. They would definitely not be able to withstand it. Just like Wu Air, they would definitely suffer internal injuries. Sumo raised an eyebrow. He was already holding the lotus vine in his right hand. He could make his move at any time. However, at this moment, Wang Yu and Xin Ming could not help but look at each other. Of course, they were aware of the current situation, but they still had trump cards that they had yet to use. It was impossible for two first-layer Martial Highness Realm cultivators to kill them. Otherwise, they would not have dared to enter the Glaze realm so easily. They still had secret technique. Wang Yu and Xin Ming were telepathically connected. They knew each other's thoughts as soon as their eyes met. When they looked again, they began to form hand seals at the same time, and their speed was extremely fast. Their hand seals were exactly the same, but the changes were complicated, and there were thousands of them in an instant. Whoosh, when they looked again, their bodies were suddenly approaching each other. In an instant, the two of them merged into one. Third layer Venerable Realm. After Wang Yu and Shen Ming merged into one, their realms underwent a qualitative change. It was an unbelievable technique. Huh! That scene made all the monks' expressions change. They had never seen a spell like that. The technique of the three realms is amazing. The white-haired old man nodded and praised. On the other hand, Sumo's expression was relatively calm. That was because he knew that Wang Yu and Shen Ming were once living together. Back then, they shared the same body. Wang Yu was Shen Ming, and Shen Ming was Wang Yu. However, they were reincarnated as twins after Amu broke the karmic ties. The ghost body was a unique body. Therefore, Sumo was not surprised that they were able to merge into one. However, Sumo was slightly worried. Any technique like that must have a flaw. Otherwise, they would not have chosen to merge at the most crucial moment. It might not be a good thing after merging. Whoosh, whoosh. Meanwhile, Wang Yu and Shen Ming did not say a word. Once they merged, they chose to use their spears. Third layer Venerable Realm. They did not give Si Tong and Si Yi any chance. As soon as they saw Wang Yu and Shen Ming merging into one, their spears had already pierced forward. Their speed was so much faster than before that it was impossible to see them clearly. The power of the Venerable Realm filled the air. After merging, one of their eyes was Wang Yu's, and the other was Shen Ming's. It looked extremely strange. At that instant, Wang Yu's eye suddenly shot out thousands of rays. A technique. It was a secret technique that Wang Yu did not use before. She could only use it once against a Venerable Realm cultivator. At that instant, Si Tong and Si Yi felt as if thousands of Wang Yu and Shen Ming had appeared in front of their eyes. The world was spinning. It was as if they were looking at everything through a kaleidoscope. It was the ghost pupil illusion technique. Puff, while they were lost in thought, Wang Yu and Shen Ming's spears had already pierced through Si Tong's chest. Then, they turned to Si Yi. At that instant, Si Ji made his move. He was also a third-layer Venerable Realm cultivator. How could he watch as Wang Yu and Shen Ming killed his junior brother? He wanted to save Si Yi. He flung his sleeves. Thousands of dark swords flew out from his sleeves. Each of the swords was only 3 inches long. Each of the swords was a divine weapon of the Venerable Realm. Each of them looked like a dark fish, and they covered the sky. It was Monk CG's secret technique. He did not use it easily. Even a third-layer Venerable Realm cultivator would not be able to block these flying swords. However, when she looked at Wang Yu and Shen Ming, they stretched out their left hand. Sumo could clearly see that the palm of their left hand was faintly emitting a 5-colored divine light. It was a forbidden diagram in the palm. That forbidden diagram was the same as the one under Wang Yu's feet. It was a mature forbidden diagram. At that moment, Sumo was sure that it was not Wang Yu and Shen Ming's deduction, but the protective forbidden diagrams that Wang Ju had sealed on them. Wang Ju's forbidden diagrams were invincible in all realms. Whoosh, the forbidden diagrams instantly spread out. In the void, between Wang Yu, Shen Ming, and CG, another spacetime seemed to have appeared. Countless flying swords fell into the five-colored light hole. They were sent away. Monk CG's expression changed. He had never seen a forbidden diagram technique before. At the same time, Wang Yu and Xin Ming's spears had already pierced through Si Tong's head. Bang! Si Tong's head exploded and his soul scattered. Chapter 938. Two first-layer martial Venerable Realm cultivators were destroyed. Monk CG's expression changed drastically. He did not expect the two red-dressed female cultivators to be so powerful after merging. Whoosh! Monk CG retracted his sleeve. Otherwise, his flying swords would be devoured by the forbidden map. However, Monk CG was a third-layer martial Venerable Realm cultivator after all. He immediately changed his attack after being thwarted. When he looked again, a black lotus suddenly appeared between his eyebrows. At that moment, Suemo raised his eyebrows, while the white-haired old man sneered. Black lotus, it was the black lotus again. Just now, CG and CG's techniques had black lotuses. Another black lotus appeared between CG's brows. None of this was a coincidence. However, this black lotus was different from CG and CG's technique. The reason for that was because it contained a mysterious power. It was the power of the world. As soon as the black lotus appeared, the void distorted. Wang Yu and Xin Ming's forbidden map was also distorted. The forbidden map did not dissipate, but it could not devour it like before. The two powers began to tangle. They each had different powers of the world attached to them. Monk CG's expression was cold. His black robe fluttered slightly. At this moment, the remaining monks of Futu Temple were all standing behind him. Kong Jian's eyes were filled with killing intent. Wang Yu and Xin Ming's faces were pale. Even though they had the forbidden map to protect themselves, they could not merge for too long. This was also one of their weaknesses. If they continued to fight, they would definitely lose. They were powerless to fight back. Whoosh! At that moment, Kong Jian, who was watching the battle, suddenly waved his hand. 3 prayer beads flew toward Wang Yu and Xin Ming. Between experts, life and death could be determined in an instant. Kong Jian's sneak attack was enough to affect the outcome of the battle. The 3 prayer beads formed a triangular shape and looked like 3 sword rays. At that moment, Monk CG's lips curled into a cold smile. As long as they could win, it did not matter what methods they used. He believed that Kong Jian did the right thing. However, just as the 3 prayer beads flew toward Wang Yu and Xin Ming, a green figure suddenly appeared. He stood in front of Wang Yu and Xin Ming. When he looked again, the lotus vine in his hand split into 2. Pipa, pipa, the lotus vines were like whips, directly smashing the 3 prayer beads. At the same time, it transformed into a straight spear and pointed at the space between Kong Jian's brows. The venerable peak. Monk CG's expression changed drastically. Because that was an existence that could destroy him with a raise of his hand. Moreover, he didn't recognize the green-robed young cultivator in front of him. In the Jialan world, other than the 4 Emptiness sect, there were other venerables? That was something he had never expected. Puff! A crimson light flashed in the void. There was no doubt that Kong Jian would not be able to dodge Sumo's lotus vines. At the moment of his death, he did not understand what was going on. Never in his wildest dreams did he imagine that he would die at the hands of a peak Exalt realm cultivator. Blood mist rose. Kong Jian's Tao vanished and his soul perished. At this time, Monk CG had already turned around and was about to escape. In front of a peak Exalt realm cultivator, even with the protection of the Black Lotus, he was no match at all. However, how could Sumo let him go? Puff, puff, with a flick of his wrist, Sumo's lotus vines instantly split into several. Like dragons, they directly entangled Monk CG. The lotus vines were top-grade Lianhua. At this time, Monk CG was firmly bound. Sumo wanted him alive. At this time, the monks on the high platform also wanted to escape. Sumo smiled coldly. He did not move from his spot, but grabbed the void with one hand. Bang bang, none of the monks from Futu Temple were spared. All of their heads were smashed and their souls perished. Those who aided the evildoer should all be killed. Futu Temple destroyed all living beings. Killing them was a good deed. The woman's skeleton was still floating in the void. It was still emitting a faint red light. Bang! At this time, Wang Yu and Xin Ming suddenly separated. Both of their faces were deathly pale. Just now, if not for Sumo's help, they would definitely be seriously injured. Xin Ming looked at Sumo in a daze. Therefore, Sumo was currently in disguise. Xin Ming did not have ghost eyes, so he could not see through Sumo. Wang Yu glanced at Sumo and said lightly, "Next time, you can make a move earlier. If you were any slower, I'm afraid we sisters would have died." Sumo laughed. "Don't worry, Miss Yu." "Sister? He is?" Xin Ming asked. "He is the Demon King and also the Dark Supreme." Wang Yu said, "He is now called Sumo." Xin Ming heard and could not help but smile. "Thank you, Demon King, for saving my life. It's my duty." "Miss Ming, you are welcome," Sumo said. Then, with a wave of his hand, the female skeleton was already in front of him. "You want this skeleton?" "Yes." Wang Yu nodded. "I heard that this skeleton can directly reach the peak of the Supremacy Realm. Therefore, we want to give it a try." "Good." Sumo smiled. "Then I will give this skeleton to you." With that, Sumo was about to give the skeleton to Wang Yu and Xin Ming. However, the white-haired old man suddenly appeared. "Wait!" The white-haired old man suddenly stopped Sumo. Sumo could not help but be stunned. "Demon King, you cannot give this skeleton to others. It is very important to you," the white-haired old man said. "Old man, why do you say so?" Sumo asked. "Also, I still do not know your background." At this time, Wang Yu also looked towards the old man. But, her demonic eyes flashed. She was unable to see through the white-haired old man's background. Lotus Scholar? Wang Yu couldn't help but glance at Sumo. This was because Wang Yu could see through anyone below the Lotus Scholar level. "Haha, don't ask me who I am yet." The white-haired old man laughed. "Demon King, I will only say 3 words to you, and you will put away this skeleton." Sumo was startled once more. "Old man, please speak." "Mu Bai Mu," the white-haired old man said. "What?" Sumo's complexion suddenly changed. Because this was a name that Wu-er had mentioned before. Unfortunately, Wu-er only remembered this name. She didn't know anything else. However, Mu Bai Mu was definitely related to Wu. "Old man, please explain," Sumo said. "Haha." The white-haired old man shook his head. "You will have to find the rest yourself. This old man can only help you to this point." As he finished speaking, the white-haired old man's figure began to fade. "Senior," Sumo hurriedly said. "If fate wills it, we will meet again." The white-haired old man said, "Demon King, the 4 Void sect is the power of the Black Lotus. You can eliminate them along the way." The white-haired old man completely vanished. Sumo was at a loss. And at this time, Wang Yu looked at Sumo. He couldn't help but arch an eyebrow. "Demon King, that Buddha bone belongs to you. We don't want it." Sumo slowly came back to her senses. Just now, he had already said that he would give the bone away, but now he wanted to take it back. Thus, he didn't immediately act. "The bone isn't important." Wang Yu saw through Sumo's hesitation. "From what that old man said, this bone seems to be related to you. Today, if you don't act, we won't be able to keep our lives. This bone belongs to you." "I just want to find my big brother," Wang Yu said faintly. "Everything else isn't important. As long as I find my big brother, it doesn't matter what my cultivation realm is. I just want to find my big sister," Xin Ming added with a smile. "Many thanks." Sumo cupped her fists towards Wang Yu and Xin Ming. Then, she put the bone into her universe bag. Then, she looked towards Monk 4 Serenities. Where is the 4 Void sect? Sumo asked coldly. Chapter 939. Monk CG was bound by the lotus vines and couldn't break free. He was confused by the conversation between Sumo, Wang Yu, and Shin Ming. He didn't know who the people in front of him were. Because he didn't know about the Demon King of the Three Realms. The 4 Void sect was the #1 sect in the entire Sangharama realm, but that was only in the Sangharama realm. More importantly, Monk CG wasn't the absolute core of the 4 Void sect. Originally, he was only ordered to retrieve the skeleton. As for helping Kong Jian to advance, it was just an excuse. If Sumo didn't kill Kong Jian, she would only be a white bone vessel when she returned to the 4 Void sect. She would definitely die. Monk CG didn't expect that there would be a peak venerable on Sangharama planet. Where is the 4 Void sect? Sumo's question stunned Monk CG. Why, you don't want to say? Sumo said indifferently. Huh. Monk CG came back to his senses. Sir, you're asking where the 4 Void sect is. Do you want to kill your way into the sect? It's possible. Sumo said. Monk CG shook his head. Sir, it's true that you're a peak venerable. But this poor monk still advises you not to go. Because there are also peak venerables in the 4 Void sect. If you fight a sect alone, it's like throwing an egg against a rock. Throwing an egg against a rock? Sumo couldn't help but smile. How many peak venerables are there in the 4 Void sect? 2. Monk CG said. Moreover, there are 3 ninth stage venerables and several venerables. 2 peak venerables and 3 ninth stage venerables. Sumo nodded. If what you said is true, it's really powerful. Demon King, don't worry, this poor monk isn't lying. Monk CG looked at Sumo and said, Today, I've fallen into your hands and I understand that there's no hope of escaping. As long as you keep this poor monk alive, I'll tell you everything I know. Sumo laughed. All right. As long as you behave yourself, I can spare your life. However, if you dare to lie, I will destroy your soul with a wave of my hand. I understand. 4 Desolations humbled himself again. Why did you use the Black Lotus technique just now? Sumo said. That's the Black Lotus barrier. CG said. So long as one is at the Exalt realm in the 4 Sky sect, then they'll automatically be protected by it. The Black Lotus possesses miraculous power. Who blessed you? Sumo asked again. I don't know. 4 Desolation said. In the 4 Emptiness sect, only the 2 Exalts and the 3 Protectors know the origins of our Black Lotus. And Sumo nodded. Why did you come to retrieve that skeleton? Whose corpse was that? Don't tell me you're really doing this for Kong Jian. The Demon King is wise. Monk 4 Desolation said. That Kong Jian is an abandoned disciple of the 4 Void sect. However, his talent was not bad, so the sect secretly supported him later on. He's just a pawn of the sect. As for that skeleton, I don't know its exact origins. However, that skeleton is related to the 2 Exalts. This time, we've brought 3 Exalts, and we're determined to bring back the skeleton. However, I never expected. The skeleton is related to your 2 Exalts. Sumo nodded, and his pupils constricted slightly at the same time. Just this alone was enough for him to make a trip to the 4 Sky sect. After that, he tapped the center of 4 Desolation's forehead with a single finger, and a drop of soul blood was directly extracted and placed in Sumo's palm. What did soul blood mean? All of them knew it very well. Monk 4 Desolation laughed bitterly. He knew that if he wanted to live, then he had no choice but to fully rely on Sumo. His life was completely in Sumo's hands. Moreover, he would definitely perish once Sumo died. The Sangha realm has 18 planets. Which planet is the 4 Sky sect on? Sumo said. The 4 Sky sect is not on any planet. Monk 4 Desolation shook his head. Actually, Sumo had her doubts before. Because Ji Guang's map mentioned that the Four Sky sect was the #1 sect in the Sangha realm, but it didn't mark the location of the Four Sky sect. The Sangha realm only has 18 planets. Because planet Sangha is in the center, many people think that planet Sangha is the most important planet in the Sangha realm. However, in reality, there is a dark star in the space-time corresponding to planet Sangha. It's called Four Sky. Dark star. Sumo frowned. That's right. Monk 4 Desolation said. What kind of star is that? Sumo said. A dark star is a type of star unique to the Glaze realm. Many cultivators call it a parasitic star. Because all dark stars must have a star that covers them in the light. Only then can they be hidden in the dark, Monk 4 Desolation said. A dark star needs the power of a star to nourish it. Oh, Sumo said, what if the Sangha realm is destroyed? If the Sangha realm is destroyed, then the Four Sky star will turn from dark to bright, Monk 4 Desolation said. Then, after millions of years, a new dark star will appear. Do all the planets in the Glaze realm have a dark star? Sumo raised an eyebrow. Because if that was really the case, it meant that the Glaze realm would be divided into two worlds, light and dark. No. Monk 4 Desolation shook his head. The bright and dark stars are like human twins. They are relatively rare. At this point, he couldn't help but look at Wang Yu and Shen Ming. Because just now, the combination of Wang Yu and Shen Ming was something he didn't expect. Shen Ming had been listening attentively, and his expression was as usual. When Wang Yu saw Monk 4 Desolation looking at him, his eyes flashed and his killing intent appeared. Monk 4 Desolation hurriedly lowered his head. Just now, Wang Yu wasn't polite to Sumo. He understood that if the woman in red asked the Demon King to kill him, it would be a piece of cake. How do I get to the Four Sky sect? Sumo asked. Demon King, do you really want to go? Monk 4 Desolation asked. Without a doubt. Sumo said, if this trip goes smoothly, I will return your freedom. Really? Monk 4 Desolation asked. The Venerable of the Three Realms is never joking. Sumo said. Good. Thank you, Demon King. Monk 4 Desolation nodded. Demon King, if you really want to go to the Four Sky sect, I can help you open the dark passage. Is the layout of the Four Sky star and the Sangha realm the same? Sumo asked. More or less the same, Monk 4 Desolation said. Then where does Futu Temple lead to? Sumo said. Futu Temple leads to the Four Sky Temple. Monk 4 Desolation said. When Sumo heard this, she nodded and smiled. Good. Then we will go straight to the Four Sky Temple. However, we can't go back like this. Oh! Monk 4 Desolation was stunned. What does Demon King mean? When you came, there were 3 of you. Including Kong Jian, there are 4 of you. Sumo said, now there are still 4 of us. We can change our appearances. As she said this, Sumo waved her hand. The lotus vines on Monk 4 Desolation disappeared. As for Sumo, she formed a seal with her hands. The light in her hands fell on Wang Yu and Shen Ming. In an instant, they turned into Monk 4 Eyes and Monk 4 Tong. Sumo became Monk Kong Jian. At the same time, a set of white bones appeared in her hands. However, it wasn't a real white bone. It could be passed off as the real thing. Monk 4 Desolation was extremely shocked, because he couldn't see any flaws in the 3 people or the white bones. Don't worry, Sumo said, unless they have ghost eyes or a lotus warrior, even a peak venerable will not be able to see through my spells. How could the windwheel secret technique be ordinary? Chapter 940. Sikong Sect, the #1 sect in Sangharama Temple. In fact, in most cases, it was only passed down by word of mouth among some Sangharama cultivators. The Sikong sect was a mysterious existence to the relatively low-level cultivators of Sangharama world. The Sikong sect was a parasitic existence. Only reincarnation-level cultivators would know about this phenomenon. If their level was not high enough, they could not understand the structure of this parasitic world. The space where the Seekong star was located was completely different from Sangharama planet. However, it existed because of Sangharama planet. From the perspective of Haoyu, it could be said that the Seekong star was in the shadow world of Sangharama planet. On Sangharama planet, Monk CG looked at Sumo, Wang Yu, and Shin Ming's transformation and was full of praise. The Demon King's secret technique is extremely mysterious. Monk CG's words were mostly sincere. He was at the third stage of the Venerable Realm and was definitely a powerful cultivator. However, it was the first time he had seen a secret technique like Sumo's that could change the appearance of others and make it so that high-level cultivators could not see through it. Demon King, your technique is really good. Shin Ming also smiled and said, "If there is a chance, can you teach me?" "Sure," Sumo said. "Insignificant skill," Wang Yu said lightly. In her eyes, Xiao Luo was not as good as Mu. What's more, this wind wheel secret technique was really ineffective against her. When the ghost eye was opened, Shin Ming was still Shin Ming, and Sumo was still Sumo. Sumo smiled faintly and did not care. However, you must be careful not to speak when you see others. If you really want to speak, don't use your own voice. Just now, you have all heard the voice of Si Tong and Four Eyes. It should not be a problem to imitate it. Ba. I understand. Shin Ming put his hands together and pretended to be serious. At that moment, it was exactly the same as Si Tong. How is it? Shin Ming laughed. That's right. Sumo said, you can pass off the fake as the real one. Is it interesting to flatter each other like this? Wang Yu rolled his eyes at Sumo and Shin Ming. If you're not going to Seekong Temple, I'm leaving. If you're going, can you stop dawdling? Shin Ming stuck out his tongue. She feared and loved Wang Yu at the same time. Because back then, the tears of the river of forgetfulness, Wang Yu's personality was not gentle. Back in the magical fantasy mansion, Wang Yu's words were absolute. She didn't dare to disobey Wang Yu. So, she immediately shut up. All right, let's go. Sumo smiled, then said to Four Desolations, Four Desolations, open the passage. When we arrive at the Four Emptiness Temple, we'll pretend that we've completed our mission and return. As for the other matters, you can act according to the circumstances. And I want to know, what does your High Lord want to do with this skeleton, and whose skeleton is it? At this moment, Sumo had already transformed into an ancient wooden tray. He was like Kong Jian, holding the ancient wooden tray, on which was a fake skeleton. However, the skeleton was not completely fake, because it was transformed from Sumo's own skeleton puppet. As you command. Monk Four Desolations bowed at Sumo. Now, he had no other choice. The soul blood was in Sumo's hands, and he could only help Sumo with all his strength to have a chance of survival. Looking again, Monk Four Desolations started to form a seal with both hands. Instantly, a secret door appeared in the void. It was exactly the same as the formation that appeared when Monk Four Desolations came. Inside the black hole, a dim light was faintly discernible. Monk Four Desolations was in front, Sumo was at the back, then Shin Ming, and finally Wang Yu was at the back. In the space-time tunnel, length was not important. Even Sumo didn't have a clear concept of time in the space-time formation. He only felt that after less than 10 minutes, their eyes lit up slightly. Moonlight? That was Sumo's first reaction. What a big moon! Shin Ming tried to keep his voice as low as possible. At this time, they had already stepped out of the space-time formation. In the void, there was a supermoon. Moreover, it was blue, emitting a very mesmerizing blue light. It hung in the void, making everything look like a dream. It was a beautiful scene. On a mountain not far away, there was a group of very old temple buildings. That blue moon is actually planet Sangharama. Monk 4 Desolations said, however, if you look for planet Sangharama on Planet 4 Void, you will never find it. It can be seen as an illusion. At the same time, it is the only visible star on Planet 4 Void. Almost all of the spiritual energy on Planet 4 Void comes from planet Sangharama. Sumo couldn't help but frown. But, the spiritual energy on Planet 4 Void is much denser than on planet Sangharama? Hee. Of course. Monk 4 Desolations laughed. Because 3/4 of the spiritual energy on planet Sangharama is supplied to Planet 4 Void. This is the relationship between the bright and dark stars of Lazuli world. Sumo and the others listened and nodded. That temple in front is the 4 Void sect, right? Sumo asked. That's right. 300 miles ahead is the 4 Void Mountains 4 Void Temple. Monk 4 Desolations said, usually, the 4 Void sect doesn't care much about anything on planet Sangharama. On the 18 planets of planet Sangharama, there are existences like Futu Temple. On the surface, they are independent sects, but behind them is the 4 Void sect. There don't seem to be many disciples in the 4 Void sect. Sumo squinted at the distant ancient temple. He spread out his divine sense and sensed that there weren't many disciples in the temple. 3,000 Buddhas, 1 venerable per 100. Monk 4 Desolations laughed. What do you mean? Sumo said. The entire 4 Void sect actually has no more than 3,000 disciples. These disciples are all direct disciples of the 4 Void sect. Their cultivation is profound and their potential is huge. And for every 100 people, there will be 1 venerable. Monk 4 Desolations explained. 1 venerable per 100? Sumo couldn't help but frown. Such a rate of venerable attainment was unheard of, because there weren't many cultivators who could become venerables from the rebirth realm. But now there are a total of 12 venerables in that ancient temple. But there are 3,372 other disciples. At this moment Wang Yu, who was behind them, said plainly. When he said this, Sumo was still fine. Because she knew how powerful Wang Yu's ghost eye was. Monk 4 Desolations, on the other hand, was shocked. Because there was a peak venerable level formation on the 4 Void Mountain. Even Sumo might not be able to investigate everything so clearly. 3,000 Buddhas, 1 venerable per 100 is just a saying. Among them, the 4 Void Temple is exaggerating. Miss, you don't have to be so calculative. Monk 4 Desolations explained with a smile. Now, there are still a few venerables wandering outside. Now, excluding me, there are still Si Tong and Si Mu. The 4 Void sect should have a total of 15 venerable level cultivators. Since that's the case, it's extraordinary. Sumo thought for a while and said, I'm afraid it's because of the Black Lotus? Quickly becoming a venerable. Otherwise, it's impossible to have such a ratio. Demon King is wise. Monk 4 Desolations let out a long sigh. That's right. Actually, in the cave abode at the back of the 4 Void Mountain, there has always been a Black Lotus. In the 4 Void Temple, cultivators above the 7th level of Rebirth Realm can go there regularly. With the help of the Black Lotus, our cultivation speed will increase by leaps and bounds. Unfortunately, this will make your foundations unstable. It's like pulling up seedlings to help them grow. Sumo frowned and said, You will only become tools and puppets. In the end, you will be exhausted and it will be hard for you to attain Tao. Monk 4 Desolations looked at the 4 Void Temple from afar and laughed helplessly, but did not say anything. Chapter 941. Perhaps everyone would want to own a puppet. This was because controlling a puppet might give one a sense of pleasure. At the same time, everyone might be a puppet. It was just that, at different levels, the corresponding masters were different. Humans were constantly being restrained. Sumo was right when she said that CG was Black Lotus's puppet. However, wasn't CG Sumo's puppet now? To CG, he was still a puppet, just that his master had changed. Therefore, CG could only smile helplessly. He was never free. CG, don't worry. Sumo saw through CG's thoughts and could not help but smile. I will do my best to protect you. After this is done, I will definitely return your soul blood and set you free. Thank you again, Demon King, CG said. Regardless of the final outcome, Sumo's words made CG feel slightly at ease. We are about to enter 4 Emptiness Temple. CG continued, Demon King ladies, please be careful. To us, the current 4 Emptiness Temple is a dangerous place. I will try my best to make everything look natural and normal. Si Tong and Si Mu were originally my people, but the 2 supremacies might want to ask Kong Jian. I will act according to the circumstances, Sumo said. CG nodded. Then, he straightened his body slightly, and his entire temperament changed slightly. After all, Si Tong and Si Mu were his juniors, and Kong Jian was not a supremacy. Therefore, he had to display the imposing manner of a leader. Sumo, Wang Yu, and Shen Ming naturally knew how to cooperate, and each played their respective roles well. Whoosh! A cloud appeared under CG's feet, and the 4 of them headed straight for the mountain gate of 4 Emptiness Temple. The distance of 300 miles was covered in an instant. At this moment, 4 young monks stood outside the mountain gate of 4 Emptiness Temple. 4 of them were in the first stage of rebirth. They looked to be in their 20s, but Sumo and the rest knew that these young monks had cultivated for tens of thousands of years. The 4 young monks were the gatekeepers of 4 Emptiness Temple. Greetings, Uncle Masters. When the 4 young monks saw CG and the rest, their expressions did not change much. After all, there were quite a number of monks going in and out of the monastery on a daily basis. When they saw Kong Jian, they felt somewhat unfamiliar. However, they didn't have the right to interrogate the person CG brought back. In fact, Kong Jian had also cultivated in the 4 Emptiness Temple, but they had not interacted with each other. Ba. 4 Solitude nodded lightly and didn't say anything else. Then, he led Sumo and the others through the mountain gate. They did not arouse any suspicion. After passing through the mountain gate, they soon arrived at the Temple of 4 Emptiness. The 4 Emptiness Temple looked ancient and mysterious. The grayish-white walls were about 70 to 80 feet high. That was not something that ordinary temples could compare to. The runes on the courtyard walls were faintly discernible, emitting a faint radiance. 2 gray doors with black knockers were also covered with runes. It was a restriction at the peak of the venerable realm. Actually, the area within a radius of several dozen miles was the territory of the Temple of 4 Emptiness. The entire temple was like a Buddhist country bestowed by the heavens. Creak. Just as CG and the others were about to reach the entrance of the temple, the 2 doors slowly opened. 3 monks walked out from within the formation. Just like monk CG, they were middle-aged and wore black monk robes. The leader was a stage 4 venerable. The 2 monks behind him were stage 1 venerable. Ba. The leader of the 3 monks put his palms together and smiled. Congratulations, junior brothers. You've completed your mission and successfully brought back the Buddha's bones. Senior brother Si Ming. Monk CG smiled too. With the protection of the Honorable Lord, we didn't let you down. Moreover, I've brought back junior brother Kong Jian, so I can ask the Honorable Lord to help him change his bones. Si Ming and CG looked at each other and knew what was going on. Kong Jian was at most a vessel for the bones. Once Kong Jian returned to the 4 Emptiness sect, he would definitely die. Excellent. Excellent. Monk Si Ming smiled at Kong Jian and said, Junior brother Kong Jian, it's been hundreds of thousands of years since we last met. I didn't expect you to really return to the sect, and you've even improved. You're really fated with Buddha. Thank you, senior brother Si Ming. Sumo, who was disguised as Kong Jian, put her palms together and bowed at Si Ming. At the same time, she nodded at the other 2 monks. Si Ming and Kong Jian had met in the Four Emptiness Temple before. However, they did not interact much. Kong Jian was finally released from the sect, and he was actually an unranked disciple. Si Ming was currently a stage 4 venerable. If they did not meet here today, he probably would not even remember Kong Jian. At this moment, Sumo, who was disguised as Kong Jian, had a calm and slightly indifferent expression. It was indeed very suitable for the current situation. Kong Jian was about to reach the heavens in a single step, so there was naturally no need for him to be too humble. Monk Si Ming sneered in his heart. CG did not want to waste any more time here. He was also afraid of giving himself away, so he asked directly, "Senior brother Si Ming, are the two honorable lords in the Zen cave? We're going to report." "The two honorable lords are in the Zen cave. I'm here to pick you up." Si Ming smiled and said, "Come, let's go together." "Thank you, senior brother Si Ming," CG said. Thus, the 7 of them went to the Zen cave together. There were many buildings in the Four Emptiness Temple. The Honorable Lord's Zen cave was at the back of the mountain of the Four Emptiness Temple. If there was no urgent matter in the sect, they would not use their Dharma skills. Therefore, the 7 of them walked. Si Ming led the way, while CG and the others followed. Sumo secretly observed the entire Four Emptiness Temple. This place was really a treasured place. There were many Buddhist temples and ancient pagodas. However, she rarely saw monks along the way. The huge Four Emptiness Temple was actually quiet. However, Buddhist light could be seen everywhere in the temple. On the surface, this was definitely a peaceful place for Buddhism. However, Sumo kept feeling that there was an ominous aura in the temple. That feeling was actually very faint, even faintly discernible. Sumo even thought that it might have been an illusion. It was a rather strange feeling. After the light, there was darkness. At this moment, Wang Yu was slightly frowning. That was because she could see things that Sumo could not. Inside the Four Emptiness Temple, there was dense Buddhist qi, and it looked auspicious. However, in Wang Yu's eyes, it was completely different. What she saw was actually more black mist. That mist was definitely not Buddhist light. Instead, it was somewhat sinister. And in the void of the Four Emptiness Mountain, there was actually an incomparably huge black lotus. That black lotus had straight roots, and its petals were incomparably huge. It was like a rootless giant tree floating in the void. The entire Four Emptiness Mountain was under its shroud. A sect under the black lotus? Wang Yu's family's inheritance could be said to be extensive and profound. However, when she saw this scene, she could not help but be greatly shocked. That was because this Four Emptiness Temple clearly existed in two worlds. Everything about it was actually under the control of the Black Lotus. At this moment, Sumo looked at Wang Yu. Wang Yu raised his eyebrows in response. That meaning was very obvious. This was a place of trouble, and it was not ordinary. Sumo's heart could not help but sink slightly. Chapter 942. Sangharama Realm, the void outside Sangharama planet. At this moment, there were 2 old men standing in the galaxy. One of them was wearing a short gray shirt and a pair of gray trousers. Both his clothes and trousers were in tatters. The old man was wearing a pair of straw sandals. That was Lao Xuantu. The old man beside him was wearing a brocade robe. He had white hair and a youthful face. He was hale and hearty. That was the white-haired old man that Sumo had seen before. The 2 old men stood together. The contrast was huge, but they were both calm. "Senior brother," the white-haired old man looked at Lao Xuantu and said, "Can the demon king of the 3 realms really change the situation?" Lao Xuantu grinned. "Silly junior brother, you actually asked me this? How would I know? Besides, don't you know how I judge people?" Sigh. Lao Xuantu let out a long sigh. "It's too bad. Senior brother, don't blame yourself," the white-haired old man said. "What happened back then wasn't entirely your fault. Moreover, the current situation isn't the worst. The Glaze realm and some other star regions are completely under my control. The Izong realm hasn't been purified yet. The Black Lotus can't completely change the world. Yes. Lao Xuantu nodded. But the hole is too big. It's not easy to fill. Junior brother, there are many things that I have to leave to you. You still haven't found the 3 realms Lotus Soul? No, the white-haired old man said. There are too many dark realms in the Glaze realm. Moreover, some hidden dark stars lead directly to other astral realms. The 3 realms Lotus Soul is sealed by the Black Lotus. Its aura won't leak out. Therefore, even with our cultivation, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. Lao Xuantu listened and nodded helplessly. Then protect this Lotus Soul well. Lao Xuantu patted the white-haired old man's shoulder. Junior brother, you've worked hard. This is what I owe the 3 realms. I'll leave first. Senior brother, don't worry. The white-haired old man said, you must take care of yourself. Lao Xuantu nodded, then slowly walked into the depths of the Lazuli world. His back view was somewhat desolate and lonely. However, every step he took left a gray footprint in the void. The white-haired old man looked at Lao Xuantu's back, and could not help but shake his head and sigh. He understood that Lao Xuantu had left those gray footprints to tell Black Lotus that he was still alive. Since he had been here, Black Lotus did not dare to be too presumptuous. 4 Void Star, 4 Void Temple. The monastery at the back of the mountain was an extremely secluded place. It was hidden in a dense forest. The dense forest was a bamboo forest. The bamboo was very special. They were about 30 feet tall on average, and they were black and white. One segment was black, and the other was white, alternating between them. It was definitely a type of strange bamboo. In the depths of the bamboo forest was the monastery at the back of the mountain. The style of the entire monastery was slightly different from the overall style of the Temple of Emptiness, because it was built with black and white stones of the exact same specifications. However, each stone was polished to an extremely smooth surface, faintly glowing. Black and white bamboo, black and white monastery. The door of the monastery was also black and white. It was not made of gold, jade, wood, or stone. However, it gave off an extremely heavy feeling. On both sides of the door there was a pair of couplets, black and white impermanence, life and death. Sumo looked calm on the surface, but in her heart she was thinking, this Temple of Emptiness is indeed a wonderful place. From this atmosphere, it really does not look like Buddhism. And Wang Yu was even more shocked, because she could see the Black Lotus in the void. At this moment, the layout of the entire monastery was clearly for the Black Lotus. The aura of the Black Lotus permeated the entire monastery. CG, Si Ming, and the others were expressionless. After all, they were extremely familiar with everything here. Walking to the door of the monastery, Si Ming bowed slightly to the courtyard door. My lord, junior brother CG is here. Creak. There was no sound from the monastery. But the courtyard door slowly opened. Whoosh, when the courtyard door opened, there were actually 2 little monks standing inside. They were about 16 or 17 years old, with delicate features, red lips, and white teeth. One of them was wearing a white robe, and the other was wearing a black one. At first glance, they looked like 2 ordinary little monks in 2 temples. However, their realms were higher. Sumo was shocked. 9th stage Venerable Realm? CG once said that other than the 2 peak Venerable Supremacies in the Temple of Emptiness, there were 3 other 9th stage Venerable Realm cultivators. Sumo did not expect to meet 2 of them the moment she opened the door. Moreover, the 2 little monks looked childish, innocent, and cute. They did not look like 9th stage Venerable Realm cultivators at all. This kind of contrast made people's hearts tremble. Greetings, Senior Brother Si Ming, Senior Brother CG. The 2 little monks put their palms together and bowed slightly to Si Ming and CG. Junior brothers, you're too kind. Si Ming and CG quickly returned the bow. Their attitude was very respectful. That was because they were no ordinary little monk. In fact, there were only a total of 10 monks cultivating in the entire monastery at the back of the mountain. Among them, there were only 5 martial supremacies. That was 2 supremacies and 3 ninth-stage Venerable Realm cultivators. The 2 little monks were ninth-stage Venerable Realm cultivators. One of them was called Si-Yuan, while the other was called Si-Yuan. As a matter of fact, they were being nurtured as future supremacies. Therefore, their status was only below that of the supremacies. In order to gain experience, they were ordered to guard the entrance of the monastery. The other cultivators in the monastery were all rebirth realm cultivators. However, they were the most elite reserve forces of the Temple of Emptiness. Their status was not inferior to ordinary martial supremacies. Thank you for your hard work, senior brothers. The supremacy has been waiting for you for a long time. The white-robed little monk Si-Yuan said with a smile, "Please come in. The supremacy is meditating in the main monastery." "Thank you, junior brother." Si-Ming and Si-Ji thanked him. Then, they brought Sumo and the others to the main monastery. At that instant, Si-Ji was slightly nervous. He was worried that the 2 little monks would see through Sumo's trick. After all, they were ninth-stage Venerable Realm cultivators. Fortunately, they did not say anything and allowed them to enter the monastery. Si-Ji heaved a sigh of relief. The entire monastery was made up of 3 courtyards. The supremacy's monastery was on the 2nd floor. Si-Ming and Si-Ji were familiar with the place, and arrived in front of the monastery in the 2nd courtyard in no time. The supremacy's monastery was a black and white wooden house. There were 3 steps in front of the wooden house. There were 2 ancient trees on both sides of the door. They were both towering, and their branches were luxuriant. Similarly, one of the ancient trees was black and the other white. Not only the tree trunk, even the branches and leaves were black and white. Sumo had never seen that kind of tree before. At that moment, Sumo cursed in her heart. This 4 emptiness sect should be called Black and White sect. At the front of the monastery, Si-Ming and Si-Ji stopped and put their palms together. Sumo and the others also bowed. "All of you, come in," a somewhat old voice slowly said. Si-Ming and Si-Ji led the others up the step. The door of the monastery opened. There was a praying mat in the middle of the monastery. An old monk in black sat on it. He was wrinkled, and his white eyebrows were a foot long. He had the appearance of a profound Dharma master. Next to him stood a little monk. He was also a 9th-stage venerable, and his appearance was very similar to Si-Yuan and Si-Yuan. However, he was not wearing a black and white monk robe, but a gray robe. Weren't there 2 supremacy? However, Sumo only saw one. Chapter 943. Monk Si-Ji once said that there were 2 supremacies in the Temple of 4 Emptiness. However, Sumo only saw one person in the meditation room. The other little monk was definitely not a supremacy. That was because the little monk was only a 9th-layer supremacy. At this moment, Si-Ming, Si-Ji, and the 2 supremacy monks who had been following Si-Ming put their palms together and bowed to the white-browed old monk. Amit Ba. Si-Ming greets the 2 supremacy. Amit Ba. Si-Ji greets the 2 supremacy. Si-Ming and Si-Ji said respectively. The other monks did not speak. It seemed like they were not qualified. Sumo, Wang Yu, and Xin Ming bowed calmly. However, they each had their own thoughts. 2 supremacy? Sumo was even more confused. Xin Ming was also confused. Only Wang Yu could see everything clearly. That was because there was a mystery in the meditation room. From the outside, it looked like a black and white wooden house. From the inside, Sumo and the rest were standing on the white side. Opposite them, there was a black side to the meditation room. However, Sumo and the rest could not see it. In fact, they could not see Si-Ji and Si-Ming either. However, they knew that there were 2 supremacy sitting in the meditation room. In Wang Yu's eyes, behind the white-browed old monk, there was another monk who was also sitting cross-legged. However, He was completely hidden in the white light of the white-browed old monk. That was a white-robed monk. He was definitely a peak supremacy. His aura even showed signs of breaking through. From Wang Yu's perspective, that white-robed monk seemed to be slightly stronger than Sumo. However, that white-robed monk's back was facing everything. Therefore, Wang Yu could not see his face clearly. Behind the light in the meditation room, there was only darkness. From an ordinary person's perspective, this was an ordinary meditation room. It was even filled with Zen. However, from Wang Yu's perspective, this meditation room was like a small world between yin and yang. Fourth solitude, did everything go smoothly? The black-robed white-browed monk asked. Everything went smoothly, supremacy. Four Desolation said, there was once a reincarnation realm cultivator in Futu Temple who wanted to seize the Buddha bone. However, they had all been killed by his disciple. But Futu Temple is no longer there. Ba. The white-browed monk in black nodded. Those are all trivial matters. Just bring back that Buddha bone. As he spoke, the white-browed monk in black clothes looked at Sumo and said, Kong Jian, you've done well this time. Without you absorbing the power of living beings, it would be very difficult to awaken white bones. However, the Buddha bone is very important, so I can't really give it to you. However, I will allow you to return to the sect today. Kong Jian pays his respects to the High Lord. Su Mo said respectfully. Where's the Buddha bone? Asked the white-browed monk. Monk CG turned around and looked at Sumo. It's here. Sumo opened one hand and took out the Buddha bone from her storage bag. Then, she held an ancient wooden tray and respectfully presented it to the white-browed monk in black clothes. At that moment, Four Desolation, Wang Yu, and Shen Ming were prepared for the worst. This was because if the Buddha bone was discovered to be a fake, there would probably be a battle to the death. Four Desolation, take a look. The white-browed monk in black clothes glanced at the Buddha bone, but his expression did not change. It seemed like he was not very interested in the Buddha bone. As soon as he finished speaking, a black light flashed behind him. Sumo only felt that the black light was strange, but Wang Yu saw the white-robed monk wave his hand and emit the black light. When he looked again, the black light circled around the Buddha bone. Senior brother Four Desolation, there's no problem. A young monk's voice sounded in the meditation room. This Buddha bone has her aura. Ba. The white-browed monk in black clothes nodded slowly. That's good. This way, your state of mind will be complete. Thank you, senior martial brother. The voice in the meditation room said. At that moment, Four Desolation and Four Desolation's expressions were calm. This was because they were used to this kind of situation. In Four Emptiness Temple, there were two honorable lords, one in the light and one in the dark. Usually, Four Emptiness was in control of everything while Four Emptiness had always been an ethereal existence. In the entire Four Emptiness Temple, other than the three Honorable Realm Level 9 little monks beside them, no one had seen Four Emptiness's true appearance. However, they all knew that there were two Honorable Lords in Four Emptiness Temple. One was white and the other was black. Four Desolation, for Tong, for Eyes, it's been hard on you. Monk Four Emptiness said, then return to your respective meditation rooms and rest. Kong Jian, you stay. Four Desolation, you guys go back too. Four Desolation hesitated when he heard that. At that moment, he received Sumo's voice transmission. You guys leave first, then I can get away. Similarly, Wang Yu and Shen Ming received Sumo's voice transmission. Disciples leave. Four Desolation and Four Desolation bowed at the same time. There weren't many rules in Four Emptiness Temple, but the most important one was to speak less and ask less. Therefore, they all obediently left the meditation room. In the end, only Four Emptiness, the little monk, and Four Emptiness, who Sumo couldn't see, were left in the meditation room. Kong Jian, you've been cultivating well on Sangarama planet for the past tens of thousands of years. For Emptiness looked at Sumo and said slowly, "This time, you've done a great job in successfully awakening White Bone and bringing it back." "This is my duty," Sumo said. "Ba." For Emptiness smiled benevolently, "Kong Jian, it wasn't easy for you to cultivate to the peak of the rebirth realm outside the temple. However, everyone has their own destiny. You've awakened the Buddha bone, and now you're one with it. Therefore, your mission is over." When Sumo heard that, her expression changed slightly. "Honorable Lord, what do you mean?" For Emptiness laughed. "This Buddha bone is what junior brother For Emptiness wants. Because he has an unfinished karma with this Buddha bone. Therefore, this Buddha bone belongs to him. If he wants the Buddha bone, you can't live." For Emptiness sighed. "We will send you to reincarnation, and you will return to Buddha in your next life. Honorable Lord, please spare my life." Sumo's face was ashen. "Kong Jian, I'm willing to offer my Buddha bone for this life. The road of cultivation must be filled with bones." For Emptiness shook his head and said something similar to what Kong Jian had said that day. "Although Buddha can save all living beings, he can't turn thousands of bones into bones. The road of lotus needs to be paved with bones." For Emptiness's words were like Sanskrit singing, "Hell is never empty." It had the power to stir people's hearts. But in Sumo's eyes, it was just a bunch of nonsense and evil thoughts. At this time, the black gas behind For Emptiness gradually rose. Sumo sensed that there was another cultivator behind For Emptiness. "Honorable Lord, book interest Pavilion Peak." The entire meditation room was slowly covered by the black gas. "Honorable Lord, disciple wishes to die knowing." Sumo seemed to struggle and shouted, "I only wish to hear the karma between Honorable Lord and that white bone." At this time, For Emptiness's voice sounded, but his voice was a little lonely. When a person is about to die, his words are kind. "Since you have such a last wish, I'll fulfill it." Immediately, in the meditation room, a figure in white gradually appeared. It was an extremely handsome monk. Chapter 944. Sword-like eyebrows, starry eyes, gentle as jade. His temperament was otherworldly and elegant. In the meditation room, Monk For Void appeared, his clothes as white as snow. It had to be said that if For Void returned to the secular world, he would definitely be a peerless young master. That appearance actually had some resemblance to Xiao Huang. Beautiful like a demon, demonic like a demon. At that moment, Sumo's heart trembled. For Void was indeed the most handsome monk Sumo had ever seen. But in the depths of Monk For Void's eyes, there was a dark light. That dark light was the darkest of Een. It was a projection from the depths of his soul. At the same time, For Void had an extremely indescribable temperament. His eyes were filled with melancholy. That melancholy seemed to be innate. "Kong Jian greets the For Void supremacy," Sumo hurriedly said. "Ha ha!" For Void looked at Sumo and smiled faintly. That smile was very sincere and filled with pity. Perhaps, in his eyes, Sumo was already a dead person. But towards those who were about to die, many people could show great patience and forgiveness. For Void was no exception. Facing Kong Jian, he was willing to show his grace and kindness. "Kong Jian, do you want to hear my story?" For Void asked. "This disciple knows that I cannot escape my fate, but I wish to die knowing the truth." Sumo said. "Good." For Void's words were very gentle, and there was even a glimmer of light in his eyes. Because sometimes, some people and some stories needed a suitable listener. For Void, Kong Jian was just right. And Sumo lowered his head, not daring to speak. One of the most important goals of his trip to the For Emptiness Temple was to find out about this skeleton. Because the white-haired old man had mentioned Mu Bai Gu. For Nothingness took a deep breath and chanted the name of Buddha, Ba. "Kong Jian, listen to me." Sumo nodded. "In the Kazaran world, there was a one star called Shurzi. I was once the prince of a Buddhist country called Shi. My country was called the ascetic Buddha. Monk Four Void's eyes showed a look of reminiscence. The ascetic Buddha kingdom was once an extremely barren country. Even now, I believe that it was once the most impoverished country in the entire Samgarama realm. For emptiness's eyes showed bitterness and helplessness. Shitsi Shinku Buddhist country seems to be an existence abandoned by Buddha. He let out a long sigh. Even though tens of thousands of years had passed, everything that had happened in the past was still engraved in the hearts of the Four Hollows. They had never been forgotten, and in fact, they were becoming clearer and clearer. Therefore, although I'm the so-called prince of the Buddhist kingdom, I'm not much different from a commoner, said Four Voids. I don't have any cultivation resources. On the Shitsi star, I am also an existence that can be robbed at any time. Prince is just an empty title, even a burden. That time, I starved for 9 days and was on the verge of death. At that time, there was no hope for me to cultivate. On the Sangarama planet, my Buddhist kingdom was almost destroyed. A member of the royal family was killed. At the same time, there are enemies chasing after me day and night. For Void said slowly, it can be said that I have nowhere to go. Even the heavens won't respond and the earth won't speak. Buddha was nowhere to be found. Ha ha! Four Voids coldly laughed. His eyes flashed with a deep hatred. It was a kind of resentment that could not be erased for generations to come. Sumo could sense that although Four Voids spoke of the past in a simple manner, the situation at the time was definitely not ordinary. Four Voids must have experienced endless despair. That past experience had definitely become a seed of darkness in Four Void's heart. Therefore, I wanted to commit suicide. However, although Buddha wasn't there, she appeared. Four Voids looked at the floating skeleton in the meditation room. In that instant, a rare light shone in his eyes. She was the light of his years of despair. On the surface, Sumo listened in fear and trepidation. But in her heart she was shocked. Because Four Voids had finally spoken of this skeleton. The karma between them had begun. When I was about to die, she appeared. Four Voids said, she was dressed in white. Her beauty was peerless and her techniques were powerful. She saved me. Four Void's voice was filled with praise and gratitude. She was called Mu Baimu. Four Voids said, what a beautiful name. Sumo's heart shook. Because that was the name that Wu Er had once mentioned. Moreover, all of Wu Er's reincarnations had the surname Mu. Mu Hongchen and Mu Jinghong were the same. Wasn't this Mu Baimu also the reincarnation of Wu Er? In that instant, Sumo suddenly thought of the poem on the portrait in Mu Jinghong's cave. Dust to dust, dust to dust. Void to void, nothing to nothing. 10,000 years of admiring the world of mortals, a lifetime of white bones. 10,000 years of admiring the world of mortals, a lifetime of white bones. Before, Sumo had always thought that the last sentence referred to everything on the continent of white bones. But now, it seemed that it referred to something else. She saved me. Four Voids repeated his words. His tone was filled with satisfaction and pride. She brought me back to the ascetic Buddhist kingdom. Therefore, I took her as my master and she guided me in my cultivation. From then on, I could be considered to have truly stepped onto the path of cultivation. 3,000 years, that was the happiest time of my life. My cultivation advanced by leaps and bounds, far surpassing that of ordinary cultivators. She said that I was a peerless genius, and that I was incomparably diligent. Four Voids smiled. Actually, I just didn't want to disappoint her. Four Voids let out a long sigh. I risked my life to become a cultivator, just to reach a higher realm. Later, I unified the Shitsi star. My ascetic Buddhist kingdom became the strongest existence. It was rich and happy, powerful and free. As Sumo listened, she couldn't help but frown inwardly. Because Four Voids' tone began to tremble. Sumo guessed that some unforeseen event must have occurred later on. Sure enough, For Void's words changed slightly. Originally, I could have made the ascetic Buddhist kingdom stronger. My cultivation level can also be improved. Everything became more and more prosperous. But For Void's voice paused. His expression changed slightly and his eyes dimmed. But she wanted to leave the Sangharama planet. For Void's slender and fair hands gradually tightened. His cheeks tightened slightly. But I couldn't leave her. For Void's face was slightly flushed because of excitement. That was a situation that would almost never happen in the peak of the Venerable Realm. She can't leave. For Voids continued, everything was built for her. She was everything to me. In my heart, she surpassed everything else. So, I didn't want her to leave. Indecent love? Sumo understood. Monk For Voids actually fell in love with her master. But she insisted on leaving. She said that she was only my master. Monk For Void said painfully. She said that she had someone to look for. I was only her disciple. Haha. I didn't want to just be her disciple. Monk For Voids laughed nervously. I begged her. I knelt outside her cave for 9 days and 9 nights. I only hoped that she would stay for another 1,000 years. But she wasn't moved. Instead, she became even more determined. Her heart was as cold as ice and as firm as a rock. For Void's eyes flashed with a cold light. He coldly glanced at the white skeleton, then looked at Sumo and said, "So, I killed her." Chapter 945. Void 4 had killed Mu Bai Gu. At that moment, Sumo's eyebrows jumped. There was an indescribable feeling in his heart. Because Void 4's tone was not only cold, but also a kind of joy. In the past, her cultivation was above mine. Don't you want to know how I killed her? Void 4 looked at Sumo and asked. There was an indescribable complexity in his eyes. Sumo lowered his head and did not answer. At this time, he was empty. His silence in fear and trepidation was the best performance. In truth, Void 4 did not need his answer. Because he only needed a listener. He could answer all the other questions on his own. Ha ha! As expected, Void 4 did not care about Sumo's answer. He said to himself, because I poisoned her to death. Poisoned to death. Void 4's eyes flashed with ruthlessness. On the Shitsi star, there is a strange flower called the Shitsi flower. According to the legends, it is a strange flower that was sown by the first master and disciple on the Shitsi star. Originally, it could cure 100 poisons, replenish spiritual energy, and increase cultivation. But later, for some reason, the master and disciple turned against each other and fought to the death. Master cleaned up the family. From then on, the Shitsi flower became a poisonous flower, a poison that targeted master and disciple. As long as one cursed it with soul blood, it would have a miraculous effect. Ha ha! Void 4 laughed coldly. A trace of viciousness flashed across his handsome face. In truth, I could have done it later. As long as she agreed to accompany me for another 1,000 years, I would have given up and let her go. But she refused. She did not believe me. She thought that I had already developed demonic thoughts. She did not give me a chance. She insisted on finding the person she wanted to find. Void 4's tone became even colder. In his eyes, there seemed to be endless flames of unwillingness. In that moment, Sumo could feel that the Void 4 of the past had indeed developed demonic thoughts. And now, even though Void 4 had a good appearance, he had already entered the demonic path and was unable to extricate himself. So she forced me. I had no other choice. So I sacrificed my soul's blood and cursed her. Sumo lowered his head, but his eyes were cold. He was waiting for the contents of the curse of the 4 Void. At this moment, Void 4 took a deep breath. With my blood, I curse my master. His soul shall be annihilated, but his bones shall exist forever. They would never meet in life, and they would never hear of each other in death. The Sangharama Sea of Buddha hid his corpse. Monk Sishu uttered a vicious curse once again. Scenes from the past flashed through his mind. In the past, he was called Suzi, not Susi. That year, on that day, Mu Baigu had already packed everything up and was standing outside his cave dwelling. She was dressed in white and looked like a fairy. In reality, she had already wasted too much time on the noble blue realm's Shitsi star. She still had to find the person she wanted to find. Outside the cave, she was waiting for someone, because she had promised Shuzi that he would send her off. It was time to end the fate of a master and disciple. Mu Baigu softly sighed. The Shuzi of the past really was like Xiao Huang. So, she had saved him and helped him cultivate. Unfortunately, he wasn't Xiao Huang. Shuzi's talent was extremely high and he was exceptionally diligent. He was like a samsara of the three realms, but in the end he wasn't. So, Mu Baigu had to leave. Her existence was to search for the samsara of the three realms. Shuzi was no longer the same as he was in the past. The ascetic Buddhist kingdom had unified the Shitsi star, and was powerful and peaceful. There was no need for Mu Baigu to stay here any longer. Master! At this time, Shuzi had already appeared in front of the cave dwelling. He was dressed in white. His face was handsome and filled with the aura of a Buddha. Shuzi, I do not know when we will meet again, Mu Baigu slowly said. You and I were once master and disciple. It is fate that brought us together. From now on, you must cultivate well. Do not forget the bitterness of the past. Only then can you save the common people. Master! Shuzi didn't seem to care too much about Mu Baigu's words. He fell to his knees. Can you really not stay for another 1,000 years? I already said that I cannot. Mu Baigu shook her head. She firmly said, Shuzi, your talent is extremely high and your talent is astonishing. As long as you discard all distracting thoughts and cultivate in peace, your future will be limitless. So, there is no need for me to stay. You can cultivate on your own. Do not delay your cultivation, do not delay your Buddhist kingdom, Mu Baigu warned. As she spoke, an array formation appeared beneath Mu Baigu's feet. She immediately prepared to leave. Master! Shuzi cried out, tears rolling down his face. Mu Baigu shook her head. Shuzi, I have treated you like a son. If you have a Buddha in your heart, then discard all your evil thoughts. Master! Shuzi knelt on the ground and crawled 2 steps. At that moment, his eyes were bloodshot. He knew that there was no hope left. His pleas were useless. He could not stop Mu Baigu's footstep. Mu Baigu didn't reply. The array formation had already been activated. Master! Shuzi's gaze turned icy cold. The blood red in his eyes turned black. At the same time, he waved his hand and summoned a strange flower. This flower was born from a stalk. It was just that one was large and one was small. One was red and one was black. These two flowers weren't particularly beautiful, but their strange fragrance assailed the senses. Mu Baigu was startled, because she didn't know what flower it was, and most importantly, she never imagined that the Shuzi she had raised would attack her. Shizihua was an extremely rare flower. Shuzi had sought out Shizixing and obtained one, a strange fragrance assailed the senses. The world spun. But by the time Mu Baigu realized everything, it was already too late. She could only hear Shuzi's icy curses, as if he were chanting. With my blood, I curse my master. His soul is annihilated, but his bones exist forever. In life we will not meet, in death we will not hear. In the Sangharama Buddhist sea, his corpse is hidden. Xiao Huanger. In that moment, Mu Baigu felt her divine sense slowly being eroded away. Her memories were being overwritten. At the same time, her physical body began to dissipate. Her soul was being annihilated. Lala Shuzi knelt on the ground, watching everything with an icy expression. At this time, a black mist was emitting from his back. The mist was gradually turning into a lotus. He had already begun to turn black. Mu Baigu's physical body instantly turned into mist and dissipated. A white skeleton appeared in the void. Shuzi formed seals with his hands. Then, a formation appeared beneath the skeleton. Hua, at the other end of the formation, was the Sangharama Buddhist sea. The white skeleton broke through the formation and hid in the sea. Amitabha Shuzi stood up. Then, he clasped his hands together and chanted. Then, he glanced around at his surroundings. Shi Zixing Duan Shi Zi, ascetic Buddhist country, ascetic Buddhist fruit. He had already formed a contract with the Black Lotus. Shuzi decided to leave this place. Thus, he stepped into the formation and headed straight for Sangharama planet. From then on, Mu Baigu and Shuzi disappeared from Shi Zixing. Many of the cultivators of Shi Zixing thought that they had left together to cultivate. No one knew that Shuzi had killed his master. Chapter 946. Killing his master was the same as killing his father. In the past, Void 4's actions had caused him to fall into the abyss of evil. After that, he went to Sangharama planet to cultivate. Then, by chance, he entered the Four Void sect. In truth, from the moment he cursed and poisoned Mu Baigu, he had become a person chosen by Black Lotus. Those who had evil in their hearts would have evil come. He was like the greatly grand princess of the past. In the meditation room, Sumo was silent. He was waiting for an opportunity, and this Void 4 was already someone he had to kill. Amitabha. At this time, the black-robed, white-browed monk Void 4 softly chanted the name of Buddha, sighing. He knew all of Void 4's past. But because of their different positions, he was filled with sympathy and pity for Void 4. Thus, he chanted the name of Buddha because he was afraid that Void 4's pain would be too deep. Ha ha! Void 4 calmed himself down and smiled. White bone entering the sea. Mu Baigu and the person she wanted to find, they would never meet in life, they would never hear of each other in death. Her soul would dissipate. Thus, all of her past would disappear. Originally, everything was going according to my curse. But, who would have thought that tens of thousands of years ago, her white bone would float to the surface of Sangharama Sea? I don't know why such a thing happened. Void 4's eyes narrowed. But, I cannot let her corpse fall into the hands of others. She can only belong to me. So, I had your Futu temple temporarily store it in the name of Buddha Bone. Then, I borrowed your hand to allow it to fuse with the power of all living beings. Void 4 looked at Sumo and smiled wickedly. Like this, it can awaken and be used by me. I will fuse with it, perfect my state of mind and wait for a breakthrough. Void 4 looked at the Buddha Bone, his eyes gradually changing. The black light in his eyes was shining out bit by bit. That was endless evil thoughts and greed, it was all sin. Kong Jian, my story is finished. Void 4 said. How is it? Do you understand? Sumo lowered her head and said nothing. Amitabha. Void 4 smiled and put his palms together. Kong Jian, you are a very qualified listener. At the same time, many thanks to you for awakening White Bones, allowing her to regain her vitality. However, you also profaned her. So, you can only die. Who, after saying that, Monk Sishu actually made a move right away. There were almost no signs at all. He stretched out his left hand and formed a claw. His slender fingers were like 5 white hooks that directly pierced into Sumo's head. Venerable Peak. If Four Void's attack was really against Kong Jian, then Kong Jian would definitely die. Because the 4th Void Realm could directly suppress him. Kong Jian couldn't even move. However, Kong Jian was now Sumo. Moreover, after hearing the story of the 4 Voids, Sumo's killing intent was born in her heart. At this time, he wasn't completely sure if Mu Baimu was Wu Er's reincarnation, or if he was her avatar. However, no matter what the situation was, the four voids could be killed. Anyone who kills one's master or father can be slaughtered. Just as Monk Sishu made his move, Sumo moved faster than him. Because he had been waiting for an opportunity. The four voids killing Kong Jian was actually very casual. Because to four voids, killing Kong Jian was as easy as blowing off dust. The four voids had just finished telling his story. In truth, he was still immersed in his own story. In his heart, he was a victim. His master had abandoned him. His actions were just as he should be. After finishing his story, he felt a bit of satisfaction, a bit of reminiscence, and a bit of a sigh. He really hadn't expected that Kong Jian would still be able to make a move. Moreover, his movements were extremely fast, completely beyond his imagination. The venerable realm. In that instant, the four voids was a bit dazed. That was his instinctive judgment. However, he looked at the monk in front of him, who had quickly dodged his claw. At this moment, a saber appeared in Sumo's hand. The Koan Soul Saber. This time, Sumo was facing two peak venerables. Therefore, Sumo's first move was the Koan Soul Saber. He couldn't give his opponent any chance. Or rather, this was his only chance. Only by killing one could he win. Sumo's saber didn't slash at the four voids, but directly at the four voids. This was where Sumo was brilliant. Because at this moment, the four voids did not have any defense at all. Previously, it had been the four voids talking. The four voids' eyes were slightly closed, as if he was meditating. In the meditation room, there was a little monk in white. After the four voids appeared, it was equivalent to four voids handing over everything. After all, this Buddha bone was what four voids wanted. He was only helping four voids fulfill his wish. The four voids had already verified the authenticity of the Buddha bone. He knew the story of the four void. Therefore, the old monk four voids was in a very relaxed state. He had never thought that someone in the meditation room of the four voids temple would be able to attack him. The peak of the venerable realm. At the last moment, four voids had already opened his eyes. He had already sensed Sumo's strength and realm. However, it was all too late. A cultivator of the same realm with a top-notch lianhua, and it was within 3 steps. Four voids had no defense at all. He would definitely die. Boom! Endless white light emitted from four voids' body. That was his protective Buddhist aura. But how could it resist the Koan Soul Blade? At the last moment, four voids saw a face that was as beautiful as a demon. Sumo's true appearance had been revealed. Unfortunately, four voids didn't understand anything. He didn't know who Sumo was, and he didn't know the cause and effect. This old monk at the peak of the venerable realm had carelessly died under the Koan Soul Blade. Life and death were truly a matter of a single thought. Boom! Crack! In an instant the entire meditation room violently exploded. Four voids and the little monk in white reacted quickly. One after another, they soared into the air. Four voids soared like eyebrows furrowed, and his eyes instantly turned as black as ink. The little monk in white already had a long black whip in his hand. Crack! The little monk in white waved his whip in the air. No one knew what he was whipping. Dong, dong, hum! In an instant, following the little monk's whip, the Buddhist bell in the Four Voids temple rang, spreading for thousands of miles. The Four Voids bell? A powerful enemy was attacking. At this moment, the expressions of all the monks in the Four Voids temple changed. Because in the Four Voids temple, there were no powerful enemies in the Four Voids sect. That bell hadn't rung for millions of years. Whoosh, whoosh, looking again, the Buddhist aura inside the Four Voids temple shone with endless light. The 3,000 Buddhist children all came out. The air of the Four Voids temple was filled with monks of all sizes. White robes, black robes, white robes, all of them floated in the air. At this moment, they really were like gods and Buddhas in a myriad of forms. Interestingly, Four Voids, Wang Yu, and Xin Ming were also among them. Earlier, They had returned to Four Voids Temple's meditation room and were safe and sound. Just now, when the Four Voids Temple rang, Four Voids Temple brought them out. Wang Yu and Xin Ming's spells hadn't been broken yet. At this moment, they were still 4 links and 4 eyes. No one knew what was going on and no one suspected them. In fact, at this moment, only Four Voids and the little monk in white knew that the empty vision was fake. However, they didn't have the time to suspect Four Void, because this fake Kong Jian could even fool Four Voids and Four Void. In their opinion, Four Voids and Four Voids had most likely been deceived. Perhaps Kong Jian had died a long time ago. They didn't even think about colluding. "Who are you?" Four Voids shouted as he floated in the air. "Me? Ha!" Her white robes fluttered. At this time, Sumo had already revealed her bewitching appearance. She couldn't help but coldly laugh. "I am the person Mu Bai Gu is looking for." Chapter 947. The person Mu Bai Mu was looking for? Sumo's words left Four Voids stunned. Because no matter what, he never imagined that the person Mu Bai Mu was looking for would suddenly appear in front of him. A peak supreme, as beautiful as a monster. In that moment, Four Voids' heart sank. His early experiences had caused Four Voids to feel a sense of inferiority. And this inferiority was manifested in a kind of extreme conceit. Four Voids believed that he was worthy of Mu Bai Mu. Whether it was talent, cultivation, appearance, or character, he was worthy of all of them. It was because he believed that he was worthy that his heart finally lost balance. In life they would never meet, in death they would never hear. Four Voids cursed Mu Bai Mu in hopes of cutting off all ties with his past. In his heart, this was what he truly thought: she can only belong to me. If he couldn't obtain her, he would destroy her. Even if she was nothing but a pile of bones, she could only belong to him and no one else. Four Voids had once imagined just what sort of person Mu Bai Mu was looking for. He had once concluded that no one was more worthy of Mu Bai Mu than he was, and that Mu Bai Mu not choosing him was the greatest mistake of his life. No one could compare to him. But now, Sumo had appeared in front of him. Everything was different from what he had imagined. The peak supreme realm. The person Mu Bai Mu was looking for was actually at the exact same realm as him. But before, he hadn't been able to see through this person's technique, and just now, this person had drawn a saber and killed Four Voids right in front of his eyes. That saber strike had been clean and precise, its power tremendous. Four Voids was even a bit absent-minded. If that saber had been aimed at him, he didn't dare guarantee that he would have been able to block it. Four Voids had paid with his life for him. A formidable opponent. Their realms were the same, but their looks far surpassed his own. This caused Four Voids' heart to turn cold. In truth, in a life-or-death situation, most cultivators wouldn't care about such things. But all of this stimulated Four Voids' sensitive and fragile heart. To him, all of Sumo's strong points were intolerable. Ha ha! Four Voids was incomparably angry. His face paled, but he forcefully calmed himself down. He gathered his palms together. Ba, a friend has come from afar. How can a person who killed his teacher be a friend? Sumo smiled coldly. Buddha is compassionate. Fourth Void said. If we are fated, we will be friends. Hee hee. Sumo shook her head and laughed. Fourth Void, you are blaspheming Buddha. Although you are a peak venerable, you are still inferior to a mortal monk. Your actions will bring shame to the Buddha. Ba. For emptiness actually chanted the name of Buddha, and then said lightly, "You're wrong. I am the Buddha." After saying that, Four Void's body suddenly emitted endless Buddhist light. It was a faint golden halo. Within the halo were countless Buddhist seals and golden lotuses. At that moment, the Four-Nothingness was like a true Buddha that could save all living beings. However, Sumo sensed the aura of darkness in that golden light. But in Wang Yu's eyes, what she saw was endless black light. The black lotus on Four Void Mountain was even gently swaying. It resonated with the Four Void. All of the Buddhist light was an illusion. The Buddha saves all living beings. Four Void looked at Sumo and said, Mu Baimu has already died. You were not able to meet in life, and you will not reunite after death. But today I must kill you. On Four Void's face, a demonic smile appeared. Today I must kill you. Sumo repeated Four Void's words. His voice became even colder. Hee hee. Four Void laughed. Very good. Today you and I will have a showdown. I want to see just how I am inferior to you. How did you make Honorable Master infatuated with you? From start to finish, Four Void didn't even ask about Sumo's name, and he didn't want to ask about anything else. It wasn't important who Sumo was, nor was it important what she came here for. What was important was that Sumo was the person Mu Baimu had been searching for. That was enough. Four Wonders, I will take revenge for senior apprentice brother Four Void. No one else is allowed to interfere. Four Void slowly said to the little monk. Anyone who disobeys will be killed. We obey the decree. The little monk Four Wonders pressed his palms together. He then looked at monk Sishu, who bowed towards the void. Sumo couldn't see the black lotus, but Wang Yu could clearly see that what Four Void bowed towards was the black lotus in the void. This disciple will begin the slaughter. Four Void said to himself. In that moment, if a cultivator didn't know the inside story, they would have thought that Four Void was a high monk who had achieved the Tao. Before he eradicated evil, he had bowed to the founder of Four Void Temple, and then he was forced to act. But the truth of this world was often laughable. Don't worry. Four Void looked at Sumo and said, Today, this will absolutely be a fair battle. Not a single person from Four Void Temple will act. Sumo faintly smiled. It's fine. Since I dared to come, I naturally have no fear. Do as you wish. Amit Bao. Four Void nodded. You are truly worthy of being someone that Honorable Master Mu Baimu has taken a liking to. No matter what, your courage is truly admirable. But courage isn't enough to change everything. Four Void said. You talk a lot of nonsense. Sumo sighed. She really was a bit annoyed. Why did this Four Void have so much nonsense to say? Wasn't it better to just fight? Four Void arched an eyebrow. In truth, he didn't realize that he really did talk a lot in front of Sumo. Normally, Four Void wouldn't be like this. He didn't say a single word throughout the year. This was because, subconsciously, he always wanted to prove something in front of Sumo. Sumo's words caused Four Void's mind to stir. What he couldn't stand the most was Sumo's contempt. In an instant, he attacked. He didn't use his divine weapon, but rather a Tao technique. In the void, a great light shined. Within this light sat an ancient Buddha. This ancient Buddha held 7 treasures in his hands, but his face was fierce and savage. He hurtled towards Sumo. This was a magic technique that seemed both real and illusory. Because, when one's cultivation reached the peak of the supremacy realm, one could instantly solidify a magic technique. That ancient Buddha could directly become a magic weapon. However, it was at most an elementary rebirth state magic weapon. After all, even a peak supremacy could not create a venerable divine weapon out of thin air. When Sumo saw Four Void attack, he didn't use any magic technique. Instead, he directly slashed down with his blade. He had Lianbua in his hands, so he naturally chose the simplest method of attack. Sumo and Four Void's mentality was different. Four Void had distracting thoughts. He wanted to prove something in front of Sumo, but Sumo didn't have any other thoughts. He just wanted to kill Four Void. Therefore, Four Void's magic technique subconsciously had a hint of dazzling color. Not only did he want to kill Sumo, he wanted to do it beautifully. On the other hand, Sumo's magic technique was simple and direct. He only wanted to kill his opponent. The Kuan's soul blade flew towards the ancient Buddha. This blade could split open the opponent's technique, be it real or illusory. Boom! As expected, when the Kuan's soul blade passed, the ancient Buddha was destroyed. The entire four void mountains void already became the two of them's domain. The rest were scattered hundreds of miles away. Four void's expression didn't change. Actually, his Tao technique was still to test Sumo. He didn't recognize the Kuan's soul blade. After all, the Glaze realm and Wisdom realm were too different in terms of time and space. Just now, although four void saw four void killed, he felt that luck played a part in Sumo's victory. Lianbo, four void estimated the level of the Kuan's soul blade. Therefore, four void opened one hand, and a divine weapon appeared in his hand. It was a long black staff. It was very similar to Sumo's bamboo pole. Chapter 948. The ink-colored staff was like a long dragon. With the four void's weapon in hand, his aura was completely different. The black staff in his hand was about 3 feet long. It was completely black and shone brightly. When the black staff appeared, Sumo could not help but raise an eyebrow. That was because the black staff had actually cut a path through the Kuan's soul saber light and headed straight for Sumo. That meant that this black staff could compete with the Kuan's soul saber. Lianbo, the tiny Sangharama world, had a peak venerable and a Lianbo to protect him. This situation was definitely not ordinary. Behind the four voids was definitely the power of the Black Lotus. Black Lotus. Sumo gradually became curious about it. However, it was not the time to think about that now. As the black staff attacked, Sumo leaned to the left. At the same time, he flipped his wrist and the Kuan's soul saber slashed at the four void's arm that was holding the staff. The four voids saw this and hurriedly retreated. Clank, however, his movements were slightly slower. The Kuan butterfly saber struck the middle of the black staff. In reality, that was a situation that Sumo and the four voids did not want to see. This was because such a head-on clash would not benefit anyone. After all, they were both wary of each other's Lianbo. It was best not to clash head-on against existences of the same level. Boom! Sumo and the four voids retreated almost at the same time. The two Lianbo weapons stirred up a great force that swept through the void. Countless cyclones had appeared on the entire four void mountain. The expressions of many monks from the four void temple changed. At this moment, other than the little monk Four Wonders, no one knew that the four void supremacy had already died under Sumo's blade. The four void supremacy was a supreme existence in their hearts. A supremacy was a true Buddha. But now there was someone who could fight against a supremacy. That was something that most of them could not even imagine. Therefore, at this moment, other than the venerables, the other monks were at a loss. Although they had all retreated hundreds of miles away, and the four void temple's venerables had automatically formed a circle to block the shock waves of the battle, they still felt dizzy. On the other hand, the expressions of those Exalt realm experts changed indeterminately. Little monk Simiao had seen Sumo kill forth emptiness supremacy with his own eyes. Therefore, he had the most intuitive understanding of Sumo's combat power. He knew that the white-robed cultivator was extremely dangerous. A void venerable might not be able to defeat him. Unfortunately, the fourth void supremacy had issued a decree. Otherwise, if he, four directions, and four circles attacked at the same time, they would definitely be able to help the High Lord. However, he knew the past of the four voids, and he could only sigh in his heart. Monk Cg, Wang Yu, and Shen Ming naturally hoped that Sumo would win. Si Kong did not appear, so they guessed that he was either killed or seriously injured by Sumo. Therefore, as long as he killed Void 4, everything would be solved. For Solitude didn't expect Sumo to be able to fight the two High Lords alone. Before this, he had no confidence in his heart. However, his soul blood was in Sumo's hands, so he could only take a gamble. Now, it seemed like there was hope. Therefore, 4 Solitude, Wang Yu, and Xin Ming had been paying attention to the battle. At the crucial moment they could help Sumo. As for the High Lords like 4 Directions, they were in a state of freedom. This was because other than the 2 High Lords, 4 Directions, and 4 Circles, the 3 Little Monks, had the highest cultivation base. At this moment, the 3 Little Monks were standing in a triangular formation. They were closest to Void 4 and Sumo. Therefore, everything was decided by them. If the 3 of them did not make a move, no one else had the right to do so. Against a battle team of this level, ordinary 3rd or 4th stage Venerable Realm cultivators could not change the outcome of the battle. Therefore, they could no longer control everything. All they could do was wait. Whoosh, Sumo and Void 4 were fighting again. The sword gleamed like snow, while the black rod was like a dragon. In an instant both of them attacked each other 3 times. Wind and thunder rumbled in the void. Smoke and dust rose into the sky. However, there was no clear winner. They were still holding back their strength. After all, they were not familiar with each other's technique. No one knew how many trump cards the other party had. Whoosh, at this moment, Void 4's rod turned into a sword and stabbed at Sumo's heart. The black rod glowed with a black light. This time, Sumo did not use the Koan Soul Blade. Instead, he willed it. He stretched out his left hand and the lotus vine appeared. However, it was in the form of a broken bamboo rod. Whoosh, Sumo also thrust the bamboo rod in his hand forward. The 2 Lianbo weapons stabbed at each other like divine swords. At this moment, Void 4's expression changed slightly. He did not expect Sumo to have Lianbo with her. Lianbo was something that could only be encountered by chance, even for High Lords. It was not a piece of scrap metal. Void 4 only had 1 Lianbo. This Lianbo was given to him by the Master of the Black Lotus. However, Sumo had 2 Lianbo weapons. Void 4 knew that the scales of victory had tilted in Sumo's favor. Buzz, buzz, at the same time something strange happened. The black rod and the broken bamboo rod began to repel each other when they were thousands of feet apart. The repelling force was even greater than the 2 Lianbo weapons clashing head-on. Sumo and Void 4 felt a surge of power coming from their arms. That power was like 2 Lianbo weapons stacked on top of each other. They were struggling to break free from something. They did not expect such a situation to occur. In an instant, the 2 Lianbo weapons lost control at the same time. Sumo and Void 4 left their hands almost at the same time. Because the repelling force could not be controlled at that moment. Sumo and Void 4's expressions changed. They could not help but look at each other. They were both wondering what the Lianbo in each other's hands was and why it affected their own Lianbo. However, when the Lianbo left his hands, Sumo had the upper hand. Because he still had the Koan Soul Blade. The lotus vine flew out, but it did not affect Sumo's fighting strength. He had more than 1 Lianbo. Whoosh, instead of retreating, Sumo advanced. The Koan butterfly blade in his hands surged. This time, Sumo used all his strength. He did not hold back. Without the Lianbo, Void 4 would not dare to face the Koan Soul Blade head-on. In an instant, black gas appeared under his feet. That was the unique black escape technique of the 4 Emptiness Temple. Void 4 already knew that he was no match for Sumo. He wanted to escape, but Sumo would not give him the chance. Just as the black gas rose under Void 4's feet, the forbidden 5-color painting appeared around Sumo. Moreover, the forbidden 5-color painting spread instantly. It spread far faster than the black gas under Void 4's feet. Whoosh, whoosh, it was like a 5-colored wave that extinguished the black flames. Void 4 had nowhere to go. He could only form a seal with both hands. In an instant, a soul shadow emerged from between his brows. It was Void 4 in a black monk's robe. It was his divine soul. Black and white were opposites in the entire 4 Emptiness Temple. Under the white robe, Void 4 had a yin and dark divine soul. That divine soul was the real Void 4. But how could the Kuan soul blade let his divine soul escape? Whoosh, the blade's light flashed. If Sumo wanted to, the entire Four Emptiness planet could be split in half by the Kuan soul blade. Four Void's physical body collapsed with a loud bang. His divine soul was also suppressed by the blade's light. Lotus Venerable, save me! Void 4's divine soul shouted in panic. At this time, Wang Yu saw the black lotus above Four Emptiness Temple suddenly bloom. Chapter 949. The black lotus bloomed, and a strange phenomenon occurred. In an instant, the entire Four Emptiness Temple changed color. Originally, it was black and white, but now it was completely black. Moreover, it was not just the Four Emptiness Temple. Four Emptiness Mountain and even the entire Four Emptiness Star turned black. Black fog surged, and the world seemed to have changed. Whoosh, however, Sumo's Kuan soul blade did not stop. Boom! That saber strike, without any accident, hit Four Void's divine soul. The Kuan soul blade was like a giant axe that could split the heavens, breaking everything. Four Void's soul was directly split into two. However, he did not let out any more wails. Whoosh, black wind blew and the world shook. At this moment, Sumo also saw the giant black lotus in the void. The black lotus had already appeared. Everything on the Four Emptiness Star was changing. The power of the black lotus seemed to have been hibernating on this star. At this moment, they began to awaken, and their power began to appear. Looking again, the soul of Four Void that Sumo had scattered actually floated and gradually gathered, then fell straight into the black lotus in the void. At the same time, the black lotus mark appeared on the foreheads of all the monks in the Four Emptiness Temple. However, there was no change on the foreheads of monk Four Emptiness. It was impossible for Wang Yu and Xunming to have any change. Four Emptiness soul blood was in Sumo's hands. His black lotus mark had already been erased by Sumo. Wang Yu and Xunming were fakes, so there was naturally no change. Looking at the monks who activated the black lotus mark, all of their eyes instantly became hollow, as if their souls were no longer there. Four wonders, four squares, four circles. Other than Four Emptiness and Four Void, they were the highest existences in the Four Emptiness Temple. They had always been the candidates for the supremacy position. However, at this moment they were completely lost. The three handsome little monks all had blank eyes, as if they had lost their souls. There was a small black lotus above their head. The other monks of the Four Emptiness Temple seemed to be caught by an invisible force, and could not move at all. Everything that was happening now had actually exceeded their understanding. They had no idea what was going on. The monks below the rebirth state did not even know the existence of the black lotus. Heaven and earth changed color, and the world collapsed. Sumo's figure moved, and she was already standing in front of CG, Wang Yu, and Xunming. Meanwhile, Wang Yu and Xunming had already dispelled their disguise spell techniques and revealed their true appearances. At this moment, there was no need for them to hide their identities. Fourth silence. Can you open the passage now? Sumo asked. The passageway has already been sealed. CG shook his head. Black Lotus's power is currently controlling everything. Unless we destroy that Black Lotus, we won't be able to leave the Four Void Star. Sumo, the Black Lotus has existed for a long time, said Wang Yu. The entire Four Void Star has always been under the Black Lotus's control. The Temple of Four Emptiness was basically its puppet sect. Everything here is controlled by the power of the Black Lotus. Calm down, don't panic. Sumo looked up at the Black Lotus and smiled coldly. Previously, that white-haired old man had given him pointers about Mu Bainigu, and had also said that this was the power of the Black Lotus, and that he could easily eliminate it. That white-haired old man wasn't someone who spoke nonsense, so Sumo was confident that she absolutely had the strength to fight him. Otherwise, with that white-haired old man's realm, he wouldn't have sent her to her death. Ku Wung Wung Me. At the same time, the entire void of the Four Void Mountain reverberated with chanting that sounded like Sanskrit, but wasn't Sanskrit. It was different from the Sanskrit of ordinary Buddhists, because the chanting seemed to be mixed with the roars of evil spirits. One loud, one low. The entire space was filled with a strange and demonic power. The light of the Black Lotus illuminated everything. However, red flowers had already bloomed all around Sumo and the others. Beneath the red flowers were countless forbidden diagrams. Sumo's forbidden diagrams had already been completely unfurled. Blood-red roses bloomed angrily, seeming to form a red sea that protected the final moments of peace and happiness. At the same time, they actually surged like the waves of the sea. This wasn't controlled by Sumo, but rather an instinctive reaction. The devil's flowers were actually somewhat manic. Sumo couldn't help but frown slightly, because at that moment she sensed a special aura. Sumo, the aura that devoured the galaxy, is similar to this Black Lotus. Wang Yu looked at Sumo from the side. She understood Sumo's expression. That's right. Back then, the aura that devoured the galaxy was similar to the Black Lotus. Although they were slightly different, it was obvious that they were existences of the same origin. This was also the reason why the Devil's Flowers had such a reaction. Back then, the Devil's Flowers had once protected the galaxy, but unfortunately, it couldn't resist the power that devoured the galaxy. The Galaxy Destroyer was related to the Black Lotus. Things are getting interesting. Sumo smiled coldly, and her body also slightly straightened. Because at this moment, her thoughts were a little different. Some enmity must be avenged, and some hatred would never disappear. The enmity of the dead world was already indescribable. Sumo had been searching for the Galaxy Destroyer all this time. At this moment, Sumo's Kuan soul saber tightened her grip on it. At the same time, Sumo's other Lianbo was completely prepared and could be used at any time. Sumo had to destroy this Black Lotus. Ba. At this moment, a Buddhist chant suddenly came from the Black Lotus. The Buddhist chant resounded through the entire void. However, the Buddhist chant was filled with demonic chi, and it even made one's hair stand on end. It didn't sound like a Buddhist chant at all. Whoosh! Monk Siming was the first to fly up. However, he didn't fly up on his own. Instead, he was directly sucked into the void by the power of the Black Lotus. Bang! Siming's physical body instantly shattered in the void, turning into black mist. Then, a Black Lotus soul separated from his physical body and fell into the Black Lotus. What the Black Lotus had given them in the past was now being returned in double. Whoosh, whoosh! Other than CG, all the supremacies of the Four Emptiness Temple rose into the air, at almost the same time as Siming. Then, their physical bodies were shattered and their souls were extracted. The last ones were the three little monks, Si Yuan, Si Fong, and Si Miao. They dispersed their physical bodies, and they were also puppets of the Black Lotus. Even Sumo couldn't help but frown at that scene, because at that moment, she felt sad for the monks of the Four Emptiness Temple. They were really living puppets. At the crucial moment, they could only sacrifice. Ba. Then, another Buddhist chant came from within the Black Lotus. At the same time, a black-robed monk, Si Su, floated out of the Black Lotus. He was dressed differently from Si Su, and his gaze was different. Previously, Si Su's gaze had a hint of darkness. Now, Si Su's eyes were as black as ink. It was very similar to when Sumo's demon eyes were fully opened. This isn't his real body. Wang Yu frowned. This is the power of the monks of the Four Emptiness Temple condensed by the Black Lotus. It is just a spiritual energy puppet. Someone is controlling it from behind. Sumo nodded slightly. Demon King of the Three Realms, I didn't expect you to actually barge into my dark realm. You've really walked right into the trap. The black-robed Void Four spoke. However, it was obvious that the voice came from another spacetime. Humph! Sumo sneered. The matter of the galaxy will not end until one of us is dead. With that, Sumo didn't say anything else. Boom, with a thought, he directly took out the yin-yang bell. Chapter 950. Clang hum. At this moment, Sumo waved his hand. The broken bamboo pole had already turned into a lotus vine and returned to his hand. The repulsive force just now had already disappeared. Sumo's wrist shook. The lotus vine turned into a dragon and directly whipped the yin-yang bell. Whoosh, whoosh, the sound waves instantly spread out like a tide. Sumo's wrist did not stop. The lotus vine danced left and right and continuously whipped the yin-yang bell 3 times. Clang, hum, boom. This time, Sumo used all his strength to activate the yin-yang bell. It was far stronger than before. Yin-yang bell determined life and death. At this moment, the sound in the void was like a tsunami. The yin-yang bell emitted endless mysterious light. These mysterious lights protected Sumo and the rest while surging outwards at the same time. The black and white sound waves were each higher and stronger than the one before. They rose layer by layer, like mountains and valleys, heading in all directions. Lianbois. At this moment, Monk CG was slightly dazzled, because he had no choice but to rely on Sumo. However, he did not expect Sumo to have a third Lianbois, and each of them was extremely powerful. Actually, when CG saw the Black Lotus, his heart had already turned cold. He did not expect Sumo to be so powerful. Bang bang, bang, with the yin-yang bell as the center, everything in the entire 4-void star started to collapse. The lotus vine and yin-yang bell stacked together. Its power was not any weaker than the Black Lotus. Destruction. Sumo did not show mercy. Because anyone who could destroy a galaxy could be killed. The entire 4-void temple was controlled by the Black Lotus. Everything was born for the Black Lotus. After the Venerable, the rebirth state monks started to fly into the void and were absorbed by the Black Lotus. Everything in the entire 4-void star was nourishment for the Black Lotus. If Sumo did not destroy everything, it would definitely be used by the Black Lotus. Therefore, Sumo's yin-yang bell was completely the sound of death. That was the sound of destruction, the song of the god. The yin-yang bell resounded throughout the entire star. The 3,000 Buddhas of the 4-void temple turned into black fog. Many temples turned into smoke. Then, the temple of 4 emptiness was filled with smoke and dust. The black and white sound waves were almost unstoppable. The only thing that didn't change much in front of the yin-yang bell was the Black Lotus floating in the void. Ha ha! Ha ha! The 4th void on top of the Black Lotus watched all of this and remained unmoved. He didn't care about the 4th void star at all. Layers of black waves spread out from Black Lotus's feet, temporarily blocking the yin-yang bell's attack. Demon King, give me your life. Looking again, 4 voids waved his hand and a huge force spread out. At the same time, a petal fell from the Black Lotus. The petal was dozens of feet long and dozens of feet wide. It was like a small black flying ship, but also like an invincible sail. Who, in the void, it rode the wind and broke the waves, heading straight for Sumo. Seeing this, Sumo raised the Kuan soul knife. The saber radiance soared into the sky. Boom, crack. The black Lianbois wasn't a Lianbois, so it naturally couldn't block the Kuan soul blade. The saber radiance rose and cut it in half. At the same time, Sumo's saber didn't stop and went straight for the Black Lotus. 4 voids on top of the Black Lotus sneered. In fact, the current 4 voids wasn't the 4 voids from before. He was just an illusion. But the power he had wasn't ordinary. Looking again, he instantly formed a seal. Black energy rose from the Black Lotus. The black Lianbois that Sumo had cut in half suddenly turned into thousands of black swords that attacked Sumo. Chi-chi, chi-chi, the black swords swarmed down like arrows. Most of them were scattered by the Kuan soul knife's radiance, but some managed to penetrate it. But Sumo was fearless. The blood-colored rose rose with her. Red flowers scattered on her white robe. Puff, puff, The black swords and red flowers were annihilated at the same time. The black swords couldn't hurt Sumo at all. At this time, Sumo's knife had already struck the black lotus. Boom, boom. This was definitely a battle between the strong. The Koan soul knife was a top-notch lianhua. The black lotus also had an extraordinary origin. It could be said that the two of them were evenly matched. But Sumo still had the upper hand this time. After all, Four Voids wasn't a real cultivator. The Koan soul knife left a long mark on the black lotus. At the same time, the black lotus shook slightly in the void and instantly shrank. Huh! Four Voids seemed to be shocked, because he didn't expect this result. He underestimated Sumo's combat ability. Whoosh, whoosh, Four Voids formed another seal, and this time, he directly pulled out a lotus vine from the black lotus. However, it was a black lotus vine. Crack, whoosh, Four Voids shook one hand and the lotus vine turned into a whip that lashed at Sumo. At this time, Sumo raised his left hand. His lotus vines also flew into the air. A scene similar to the one just now appeared. The two lotus vines didn't entangle in the void, but flew back separately. Rejection. Sumo finally understood. The black rod that Four Voids used before must have been transformed from the black lotus vine. The two lotus vines belonged to different lotuses, so they rejected each other. The Four Voids understood this as well. But he didn't have as many lianhua as Sumo. Black lotus transform. Looking again, Four Voids shouted. In an instant, the black lotus transformed into a lotus throne. It was a black lotus platform, and it looked extremely strange. There was no Buddhist intent on it, only demonic intent. Whoosh, the black lotus platform enveloped Sumo. With a thought, Sumo let the yin-yang bell collide with it. Just now, the Koan soul knife could split the black lotus. Then the yin-yang bell could naturally fight against it. Moreover, any divine weapon that collided with the yin-yang bell would inevitably suffer a second attack from the bell. Boom! But Four Voids had already staked everything on this one throw. In this dark world, there weren't many methods he could use. Sumo's methods would exceed his expectations. By summoning the Black Lotus, he had already made Sumo perish together with the entire dark world. Exchanging this world for the Demon King's life was definitely worth it. Boom, clang. The Black Lotus throne and the yin-yang bell collided with each other. This time, it was as if two worlds had collided. Whether it was Sumo or Four Voids, they didn't dare to move forward. They had to retreat to protect themselves. Sumo had to protect Four Silence, Wang Yu, and Shin Ming. As for Four Void, as he retreated, his expression was ferocious and murderous. He didn't need to protect anything. Not only that, but he also formed an extremely special seal. Dark World Rebirth. The black-robed Four Void formed a Dark World Rebirth seal. This was the last resort of every Dark World Black Lotus. In reality, it was similar to a cultivator's self-destruction. However, it didn't explode a person, but a world. Its power was indescribable. It was absolute mutual destruction, destroying everything. Sumo, if he self-destructs a world. Wang Yu's ghost eye flashed. She could see the changes in the aura of the entire dark world. The Four Void star was constantly expanding, and it was on the verge of self-destruction. Hearing this, Sumo didn't have time to think. Whoosh, with a single thought, the cosmos sac flew out of his body. Then it covered downwards. Before Four Silence, Wang Yu, and Shin Ming knew what was happening, they had already lost consciousness. Boom! Four Void star suddenly exploded. This kind of self-destruction had no center. Instead, the entire spacetime exploded at the same time. The last thing Sumo saw was the Black Lotus exploding. At this time, Sumo had already taken a step forward. Mystical footwork. With one step, he crossed spacetime. He was no longer in the world of Four Void Star. Outside the Stupa Star, the white-haired old man had been paying attention to everything. Because he wouldn't let anything happen to Sumo. Dark world rebirth and the self-destruction of the Black Lotus had indeed exceeded his expectations. However, just as he wanted to take Sumo out, he didn't know where she had gone. For a moment, the white-haired old man was at a loss. Sumo had actually escaped from under his eyes. Chapter 951. Sangharama Realm. The Four Skies star had been destroyed. Sangharama Realm had a total of 18 stars, but there was only one dark star. In fact, ordinary cultivators would not be able to feel its destruction at all. This was because it had always been in another spacetime. The white-haired old man outside the pagoda star could see it clearly. He took a step forward and entered the world of the Four Skies star. The white-haired old man's body glowed with green light. At this time, the power of the Four Skies star's destruction was still raging, but all of it disappeared without a trace in front of the white-haired old man. He spread out his divine sense. Now, almost everything around him had returned to primal chaos. He could not find any trace of Sumo's aura. Sumo had actually disappeared, and he did not know where Sumo had gone. The Demon King of the Three Realms has some ability. The white-haired old man smiled helplessly. Then, he looked up at the blue moon in the distance and could not help but smile. The dark world has been destroyed, hee. This is a good thing for me, Qinglianzi. As he spoke, the white-haired old man's figure actually changed, and he instantly became a middle-aged man wearing a green robe. He had the demeanor of an immortal, and his temperament was extraordinary. This was his true body. Qinglianzi was Lao Xuantu's youngest junior brother. He waved his hand again, and a green lotus seed flew out of his hand and fell into the primal chaos. Black lotus dies, green lotus grows, Qinglianzi said softly, and then he formed a seal with both hands. The green lotus seed was already fixed in the void, and it emitted a faint green halo. The green halo spread out, gradually assimilating the primal chaos aura around it. Black lotus. Qinglianzi laughed coldly. This dark star is mine from now on. With that, Qinglianzi's figure moved, and he disappeared with a step. The Four Skies star exploded. At the last moment, Sumo naturally chose to return to the cave abode in the soul storage altar. However, Sumo did not release CG, Wang Yu, or Shen Ming from the cave abode. The fewer people who knew about this cave abode, the better. Sumo arrived at the stone house at the back of the cave. He first placed the sleeping Wu-Er on the stone bed from the cosmos sack, then he took out the skeleton. In an instant, the white bones emitted a white light. At the same time, Wu-Er's body also emitted a halo. Resonance. Sumo was overjoyed. Looking again, that set of white bones directly landed on Wu-Er's body, and then gradually melted into her. Wu-Er's expression changed, but she didn't wake up. However, Sumo felt that Wu-Er's realm might change. As long as she woke up, her realm might have a qualitative leap. At this time, Sumo could basically confirm that Mu Baimu was one of Wu-Er's avatars. The white bone unwithering art was most likely passed down to the four voids by Mu Baigu, and the four voids in turn passed it down to the Buddha of all living beings. However, it was still a mystery as to why Sumo had obtained the white bone unwithering art from the ancient mortal fan in the pure land of White Bone's continent. Wu-Er had yet to wake up. Perhaps when Wu-Er wakes up, everything will be clear. Since Mu Baimu was Wu-Er's avatar, then there must be traces of her past in the Glaze world. Perhaps there would be new discoveries. Suemo took a deep breath. He didn't want to dwell on this matter any longer. Then, he put Wu-Er back into the cosmos sack. Actually, Sumo could have chosen to leave Wu-Er in the cave house, but he still felt that it would be safer to have Wu-Er by his side. There were no changes in the soul-storing altar cave. This time, Sumo didn't release the little white pig and the black-feathered deity. Although there were many immortal fruits in the flower garden, those two were gluttons. If he could save some, he would save some. Sumo stayed in the soul-storing altar cave for 7 days. He wanted the smoke of the 4 emptiness star to dissipate. 7 days later, Sumo left the soul-storing altar. However, the 4 emptiness star no longer existed. Sumo directly returned to Stupa Star. Actually, with Sumo's current realm, his mystical footwork allowed him to stay in any world he wanted. He didn't need to return to his original starting point. Stupa Star was calmer than Sumo had imagined. However, Sumo's trip to the 4 emptiness star and the soul-storing altar cave had taken 7 months. Not many cultivators in Samga realm had seen what had happened that day. However, Stupa City's Stupa Temple had completely disappeared. There were even fewer cultivators on Stupa Star who knew the truth. In Samga realm, the cultivators who knew the truth had either been annihilated that day, or would never mention it again, because there were many things that were better left unsaid. Hence, the legend of that battle became known as the Wrath of Buddha. Stupa Temple had profaned the Buddha's bones and incurred the wrath of Buddha. Endless Buddha's fire had descended to destroy everything. When Sumo heard this legend, he could only smile helplessly. Many things were like this in the infinite realms. What was spread was often not the truth, and the truth was often not spread. However, all of this had nothing to do with Sumo. Actually, this was good. Although Stupa Temple and 4 Emptiness Temple had been destroyed, many people could still live and die normally. That could be considered a form of good karma. On a floating continent in the void of Stupa Star, Sumo released CG, Wang Yu, and Shen Ming from her universal pouch. That day, the 3 of them had been put into the pouch without knowing what had happened. Amit Ba. Monk CG chanted the moment he came out. In the distance, he saw Stupa Star and couldn't help but feel that he had lived 2 lives. That day, he had been forced to rely on Sumo because she had taken his soul blood. However, he hadn't expected that it would be a blessing in disguise. Back then, if Sumo hadn't erased his Black Lotus mark, he would have perished like the other monks. Demon King, where are the 4 emptiness Black Lotus? CG asked. They've all been reincarnated. Sumo sneered. The Black Lotus wanted us to die in the dark world, but I escaped with you guys. The 4 emptiness world no longer exists. Amitba, CG really didn't know what to say. This time, it was definitely a great opportunity for him. Demon King, you're indeed amazing. Shin Ming smiled and gave Sumo a thumbs up. On the other hand, Wang Yu's expression was calm. Because, in her opinion, Sumo had always had this kind of ability. If Sumo could be trapped in a small dark world, how could she save AMU and restore the galaxy? CG, this is your soul blood. Saying that, Sumo flicked her right middle finger and thumb. CG's soul blood shot directly into his forehead. At that moment, CG had mixed feelings. To be honest, he could only half believe Sumo's words before. He thought that this trip to the 4 emptiness planet was a huge gamble and the chances of success weren't high. Even if he succeeded, Sumo might not be able to return his soul blood. For tens of thousands of years, it seemed like CG had always been cultivating in Buddhism, but in reality, the 4 emptiness temple was even more treacherous. Therefore, CG didn't have much hope. But Sumo really did return his soul blood. CG thanks Demon King. CG knelt on both knees and kowtowed to Sumo. Hee. Sumo smiled faintly and waved her hand for CG to get up. There shouldn't be any supremacies left in the Sangarama star plane. Now you are the ruler of this place. In the future, you can cultivate well and become a true Buddha. That way, you will be at ease and have more joy. CG will follow the teachings of the Demon King. CG said respectfully. Sumo nodded with a smile and didn't say anything else. Then, with a thought, a formation appeared under his feet. Sumo disappeared with Wang Yu and Shin Ming. CG was slightly stunned and lost for a long time. Chapter 952. According to the Lucky Light star map, the Southern Abyss Sea was located in the center of the White South Star region. Sumo took Wang Yu and Shen Ming away from the Sangharama star region and headed straight for the Southern Abyss Sea. However, the universe was vast and the distance was extremely far. They still needed to pass through many small worlds. Sumo, where are we going? Wang Yu asked. The Southern Abyss Sea. Sumo said. What kind of place is the Southern Abyss Sea? Shen Ming asked curiously. The Southern Abyss Sea is also known as the Minor Samsara Sea. It is located in the center of the White South Star region. It is said that some cultivators who have lost their Tao and soul will leave behind a trace of Tao shadow in the Yizang. If they are Lotus warriors, they can use those Tao shadows to bring them back to the human world, Sumo said. Shen Ming was stunned. Wang Yu also raised an eyebrow. Then can the dead cultivators of the Three Realms galaxy be resurrected? Wang Yu asked. I'm not sure. Sumo said, however, a Lotus warrior of the Yizang once told me that the Three Realms galaxy was devoured by the Yizang. In theory, they may leave a Tao shadow there. Who do you want to resurrect? Wang Yu asked again. If it's possible. Sumo paused. I want to resurrect Xiao Huang and a few of Tai Huang's masters. However, it all depends on their fate. Wang Yu listened and nodded. She could understand Sumo's thoughts. Then let's go and see the Southern Abyss Sea together, Wang Yu said. The Glaze realm is vast, and I don't know where my brother is sealed. Let's look for a needle in a haystack and wait for the opportunity. Yes. Shen Ming nodded. Anyway, everything was decided by Wang Yu, so she usually nodded in agreement. Do you have anyone you want to resurrect? Sumo asked. No. Shen Ming thought for a while and then shook his head. To me, the most important people are alive. There's no need for the others to come back to life. Wang Yu also shook her head. Only my brother isn't by my side. Shen Ming nodded. However, she was thinking about Shen Yan. Miss Yu, where are Devil Lang and Huan Hua? Sumo had asked Wang Yu this question before. However, back then, Wang Yu didn't answer him. Shen Ming was about to speak, but he looked at Wang Yu. She wasn't sure if she should tell Sumo some things. They are in the Galaxy Village, Wang Yu said after some thought. There were some things that he should let Sumo know. After all, he was only one step away from becoming a Lotus Knight. Although it was hard to say when this step would be taken, Sumo was now qualified to know about the Galaxy Village. Galaxy Village? Sumo was stunned. What is that place? It's a small village at the foot of White Mountain. Wang Yu said, there are a few villages around it, collectively called Luo Fan Town. Luo Fan Town doesn't belong to the Yizang realm. I'm not sure what kind of existence it is. However, it's definitely above the Yizang realm. Luo Fan Town, at the foot of White Mountain, above the Yizang realm? Sumo was slightly stunned. The people who live there are all supreme beings? Wang Yu nodded. The people in Luo Fan Town are basically high-level Lotus Knight. Even a farmer, an apprentice, or a page boy, if they come to the Yizang realm, they are also existences like Lotus Knight. However, they usually live the way of mortals. In Luo Fan Town, their realms are all suppressed. Under normal circumstances, none of them can leave the town. However, once they leave Luo Fan Town, they are like gods to the various realms. Then who can restrict them? Sumo said. White Mountain. Wang Yu frowned and said, however, I don't know who is on White Mountain. However, no one in Luo Fan Town dares to disrespect White Mountain. In Luo Fan Town, no one can ascend White Mountain, but there are White Mountain enforcers in the town. Those enforcers also monitor the various realms. White Mountain. Sumo thought in her heart. Regarding White Mountain, he didn't believe it when he was in the Three Realms. Because he had never seen it. Back then, Songhai said that he had seen White Mountain, so he wanted to break the cage and go to the outside world. However, the Dark Sovereign didn't believe it. He was more inclined to believe in the three realms reincarnation. However, in this life, Sumo received a lot of information about White Mountain. Now, Wang Yu's words proved this point even more. There was indeed White Mountain, and it was an existence that was too high to reach. Even high-level Lotus Knights had to be controlled by it. What exactly was on top of White Mountain? Are Mo Lang and Huan Hua both Lotus Knights? Sumo asked. My father is a Lotus Knight, Wang Yu said, because, back in the Galaxy era, he had already ascended to the peak of the Venerable Realm. So, after he reached First Zong, he automatically became a Lotus Knight. The peak of the Venerable Realm in the Galaxy era automatically became a Lotus Knight after entering First Zong? Sumo raised her eyebrows and asked. Yes. As long as one can survive the great calamity of the galaxy shattering, they can directly advance. However, back then, you died in battle. Wang Yu looked at Sumo and smiled helplessly. Are the Venerables of the Galaxy era all in Galaxy Village? Sumo said. Some are not. Wang Yu said. Who is not? Venerable Songhai Immortal, Venerable Yun San, and the two Phoenix Venerables, Xian Tian and Xing Chen, are all there. Wang Yu said. The Ghost Venerable died before the Galaxy era, so he is not here. As for the Demon Venerable and Demon Venerable, their whereabouts are also unknown. At this moment, Sumo finally understood what Songhai meant when he said that he had entered the mortal world. Fallen Mortal Town was like entering the mortal world. What about Shangye and Shui Mei? And Dong Wang and Liuyan? Sumo asked again. Back then, they were not real venerables. Wang Yu said, when the galaxy shattering, most of them fell into the cycle of reincarnation. After all, as powerful as Songhai Qin by light, they all reincarnated. Sumo listened and nodded. But, how did the Demon Venerable and Demon Venerable disappear? Sumo frowned and said, the Demon Venerable was injured back then. But the Demon Venerable is a Venerable who is absolutely unharmed. Among the Venerables of the three realms, her magic power is second to none, even above the Demon Venerable. She should be able to bring the Demon Venerable to avoid the great calamity. Coming to First Zong, we might not have the opportunity to go to Fallen Mortal Town's Galaxy Village again. Wang Yu said, in the beginning, there were only people from our enchanted mansion in the Galaxy Village. The others arrived one after another. Of course, Ming, and I have left the Galaxy Village for millions of years. We don't know if there are any changes now. That makes sense. Sumo said, maybe the Demon Venerable and Demon Venerable are already here. Hee. Wang Yu shook his head. The Galaxy Village is not a place where one can enter casually. Living in the Galaxy Village means that many things are on one's shoulders. The Galaxy Village is not easy to enter or leave. Ming, and I only left the village because of reincarnation, and it will be difficult to return. Oh. Sumo frowned. Remember that I once told you that different levels of cultivators face different situations. The few villages in Fallen Mortal Town are in a delicate situation. Actually, they all have their own strength. White Mountain is maintaining a balance. Therefore, because of the existence of the Galaxy Village, the current Galaxy Reincarnators have not been exterminated. The Lotus Warriors of First Zong did not make a move. One of the main reasons why they did not make a move was because they were wary of the power of the Galaxy Village and Fallen Mortal Town. The power of First Zong does not want to break this balance. Then what is the top-notch power that controls the world of First Zong? Is it the Black Lotus? And what is their ultimate goal? Sumo said. The top-notch power that controls First Zong should be the Black Lotus. However, I'm not sure what the Black Lotus is exactly. Back then, I did not pay much attention to these things. Wang Yu said, however, I know that their goal is to purify First Zong. They want to purify First Zong and open the door to the true Law Realm. Only then can they advance. Purify. Sumo laughed coldly. Purify means destroy. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.